just so you know. All right, we're live once again. Brian,
it's me, the kind of guy who calls bylaw.
I don't know if Brian, I didn't hear the whole story, obviously. Okay, so Brian, you could finish your story.
Well, luckily it's enshrined in an 8-minute YouTube video on our account that I'm definitely going to be deleting within 24 hours.
No, you won't.
Oh, 100%.
100% you'll forget it exists within the next 5 minutes. No,
I will not forget it exists.
So for those of you who are just watching the live video, have no idea what we're talking about. We tried recording. Brian said I sounded weird. I had to restart my computer. And here we are. Take two. Brian was telling a story about how he called the bylaw officers because someone was being too noisy. I think that's the gist of what you've missed. And now here we are about to start a live recording of the season finale of Keeping Karlsson. Is that about right? Does that about cover it?
Yep.
All right.
Nailed it.
Oh, I had a couple SeatGeek things open. I'll just have to do it on the fly. I'll do it on the fly.
Why?
Okay, fine. I'll open it now. Okay. I have my this is going to be a good one. It'll be tough. Did you see the person who tweeted us saying they like it? How
yeah.
That's going to be, I wish they tagged SeatGeek.
I was going to say, your next comment is going to be how you wish SeatGeek would notice.
Because they don't know.
SeatGeek is like Elon's deadbeat dad. Like, he just really wants their attention. Like, he won't stop working for them, yet he just craves the validation that they refuse to offer.
It's like, yeah, what you're saying is like mostly true. It's not exactly like validation. It's more like I just feel like we're doing such a good job with our SeatGeek ads, and I just feel like they don't know. They're only looking at how many people bought tickets to things. But is that really everything? We're raising their brand. We're giving people a fuzzy feeling whenever they hear the word SeatGeek.
I mean, I think we do a great job for them, but I'm not
don't know.
just the same way that, you know, I might think I'm making my father proud, but he doesn't care. He's not going to show up to my you know, championship softball game.
Yeah, my dad.
No matter how well I play.
My dad is never at these live podcasts. What's he doing right now? He's probably just sitting at home. Why don't you
It would be really nice if we had parents who came to our recordings.
Parents don't give a shit. All right.
I'm surprised your mom hasn't been a guest on the show yet.
She's not. She doesn't even know the name of the show.
I think that would make it fun.
Okay, should we start? We have a whole like 2 hours chock full of activities.
Oh God, yeah.
A fun one planned for us.
I'm getting over.
Are people still in the chat room here?
Yeah, Dave's here.
Hey, Dave.
And David might be. Adam M might still be. We lost. I think we lost a few in the transfer. Sadly.
If anyone would be so kind as to spread the word in the other chat or wherever that we've moved, you'll be a real angel.
Did you change the live link? Now you're going to tell me that it takes 10 minutes.
I didn't change it. No, I'm ready to start. I'm telling other people to do that. What are you talking about? Okay. No, I was just going to open up Dauber Hockey.
But somebody who's like, what the heck? And is trying to get into it through the live link. Can't.
I did change it. Oh, you're saying it takes 10. Yeah. I can't help that.
Adam M is here for the bio. Oh, okay. So I'll finish the story quickly. It was not a violation. However, they did go over to the neighbor and speak to them about it. Oh, and I was saying there's like the mean one who we've asked in person, and then there's the nice one who helped, who tried for like 30 minutes to help free my mom's car from being stuck on ice outside our home. And I fear that it was the nice one who got admonished tonight, which I wouldn't be happy about.
Well, don't call the police on your neighbors, and then.
Well, the thing is, I feel like I could go over, knock on their door, and talk to that guy. But I have no interest in going over and talking to the person who I've tried to talk to in person a few times because she has been very unkind.
Right. By the way, I was joking with Brian on the last YouTube video how I think he's the type of, I could tell he's the type of person that would call bylaw because he's also the type of person where every time I log onto our Twitter account.
Not every time.
I see that his report of an account has been.
I report accounts that are blatantly racist or like harassing or threatening. That's just my little attempt at contributing to a better world.
Brian's like Spider-Man, basically. He's out there at night making the world a better place, fighting crime.
Oh, man.
All right. I know a lot about Spider-Man now, by the way. I've been playing the PS4 game. I know all the names of the bad guys. I know the whole story. I feel like this guy who I used to do a podcast with, Adam, he used to always talk about all these Marvel movies, and I would just sort of nod along. And now I'm ready to chat with him. I need to get back on that show. Maybe I could do a segment about Spider-Man. Can you really shoot webs from your hands? Find out. Okay, let's start a hockey podcast. Thanks, everyone, for joining us live. Here we go. Ready, Brian? It is a great game. I'm having so much fun. Are you ready? Oh, you're not ready?
What did you say?
I asked if you're ready. I was about to start. And I said, are you ready? And then you went,
Well, you said something about having a great game.
I said Spider-Man's a great game. I was responding to the chat. We're doing a live show and we have a chat room here and they make comments. And so I feel like it's a nice, interactive activity to like respond to them.
Well, Alex said it was Grafe, not great.
He corrected himself.
Oh, I didn't realize those two comments were linked.
Well, that's a common internet thing. I guess he should put star T. That's how you're supposed to. Yeah, he actually should have written star great, actually. I think that's the mainly accepted way to make a correction. Unless you're using something good like Slack, where you can just delete your previous message or edit it. That's what I prefer. Oh, we're missing WrestleMania. Okay, sorry, let's get going. We'll be done by the main event, okay? Brian, did you know, by the way? Do you know how great the world is? All women in the main event of WrestleMania. Did you know about this?
Yeah.
Wow.
Becky Lynch.
I don't know. I learned that from watching John Oliver. Okay. Let's do this. Yes! Welcome everybody to the season finale episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the best fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys on air, Karlsson in their keeper pools. I am lightheaded, but I'm going to keep going. My name is Elon Dubrovsky. I am the host of this show, and with me is my co-host, the fantasy hockey robot, the guy who's been breaking down the numbers for us all season long, Brian Combe.
I spent so much time breaking down the numbers, but really, isn't it time we built them up?
Oh, wow. Look at this. The comedy hour beginning early. Brian, this is a special show. It's season finale. Normally, I drink a Red Bull because I want to make sure to keep my energy high. But I decided season finale, I got something to celebrate, as you know. So I'm going to crack open my beer. Why don't you tell all the great listeners about my accomplishment?
Oh, Elon, congratulations on winning Tier 2 of the Cupful for the second consecutive year. You repeated, and you are absolutely ascending to Tier 1 next year. And if I had to make an early prediction, Elon, it's that you will finish at least third.
Okay, well,
it's a tough league.
I imagine, yeah. So Dave won Tier 1. So congratulations to Dave Betton. He was on the podcast a couple weeks ago. You guys all know and love him. I shouldn't have been in Tier 2, but I stayed there. My team name was Shouldn't Be Here, and I earned the title. I won. I love to brag. I know I should be humble, but I won't be. No, I'm just kidding. Okay,
you're never humble.
I try not to be.
Why do you tend to be now?
Yeah, I'm just very excited. It was a super tough league. I'm happy to have won. And now, Brian, we've got a great show planned for today. I think we're going to take this in segments. First of all, actually, no, okay, segment 0 is I'm going to mention that we're presented by DobberHockey.com, which is the premier fantasy hockey website out there. We're so proud to have been presented by them all season long. I just went there right now. Did you know that they have a playoff guide ready to purchase? If you have a playoff pool coming up, check out the Dobber Hockey playoff list. It's not called a guide, it's called a list. So it's very fancy. They also have articles breaking down like coaches have been fired today and hired. I think, did Florida end up signing
apparently Joel Quenneville's hiring is going to be announced tomorrow, which is Monday. Might be today if you're listening to this in the future.
Yeah, so you can also
might be yesterday.
Yeah, Dobber Hockey will break it all down for you. So check it out, dobberhockey.com. Plus all the tools when we do our off-season content. We've got a whole off-season of podcast plan for you guys where we're going to break down the season, figure out who was overperforming, underperforming, start projecting for next year, and we'll be using the Dobber tools at Frozen Tools to break it all down. dobberhockey.com. Okay, Brian. So today's show, here's the plan. We've got some players who were really great in the playoff finals. I'm going to go by the Cupful finals. The Cupful is the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League, but don't worry, you don't have to be a patron or someone who played in the Cupful to know about what we're going to talk about. But it was a finals 2-week matchup over on Yahoo. So I just sorted by the top people over the last 14 days, and we'll take a look at some names of the people who were MVPs for their teams if their league went all the way to the final 2 weeks. Then we're going to look at some players who were LVPs, the high percentage owned players who totally blew it, and we'll try to predict if this was just an aberration or if we should be worried about these players going to next year. So we're going to do that. Then we got NHL playoffs coming. We are going to do a playoff preview with a twist. Every podcast goes by every series and talks about who they think is going to win. Brian and I are going to fill out our own playoff box pool We'll tell you more about it in a bit, and that's the plan. And then so obviously we'll give our thoughts as we pick our players, because obviously you're not going to pick a player on a team that you don't think is going to win the round. So that's going to be our way of previewing the playoffs. I also had this whole thing planned where we would go over lessons learned from the fantasy playoffs, but I kind of feel like we should start with the players, and we'll see how much time we have at the end. Maybe we could get to that. So Brian, how about we start with the Cupful Finals MVPs?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know that. So sorry, guys. I got to tell you, I rushed home. We had internet issues, and we're finally starting now. So I'm a little bit discombobulated, but I'm drinking
Come
beer.
on. No apologies, no excuses. Let's just get to this.
Let's do it. Okay, so what happened in the finals, the last 2 weeks of the season? So like I said, I sorted all of the skaters and goalies over the last 14 days to see who really jumped out as the people who we're going to remember going to next season that ended hot. And the hottest players came from, you're not, if you haven't been paying attention, if your league ended 2 weeks ago, you may not realize this, but the hottest players are from the Detroit Red Wings. Number one in Cupful points. And Cupful, by the way, the scoring is like 5 points for a goal, 3 for an assist, and then a little bit of a smattering here and there for shots and hits and blocks and all that good stuff. Anthony Mantha, number one, followed very closely by Tyler Bertuzzi, who was in third place overall in the whole NHL over the last 14 days. And then Dylan Larkin in fifth. Unbelievable. So in 7 games played that the Red Wings played, Mantha had 6 goals and 7 assists, 13 points in 7 games, 27 shots. Tyler Bertuzzi, 5 goals, 8 assists, 22 shots. Dylan Larkin, 10 points, 5 goals, 5 assists. Again, in 7 games, unbelievable. And there's other Red Wings players that did really well. We've got Filip Hronek on defense, who put up 2 goals and 5 assists for 7 points in 7 games. I know, Brian, when we talked about on the Patreon cast about Detroit, we'll get to this in a bit, you were saying, oh, they have no deep. Well, Filip Hronek right there. Look, future superstar defenseman Filip Hronek here, 7 points in his last 7 games. Andreas Athanasiou, non-meager 6 points in those last 7 games. Even this guy Taro Hirose, who I hadn't heard of, he had 7 points in 10 games overall on the season after he got called up. So he had a strong finish. So, like I said, I brought this up on Tuesday's Patreon cast, a bonus podcast for the patrons, like just insinuating that maybe the Detroit Red Wings could be a really good team next season, or at least a scary team offensively. Like we're looking now, I've just named 5 or 6 players who did really well to end the season. Like Dylan Larkin's a clear superstar, and all these other guys are seeming to rise to the task. At least they did over these last 2 weeks. I know already I'm hearing you say small sample size, Elon. We've also got this guy, another Filip. It's not only Filip Hronek that's going to be on the team next year, but probably Filip Zadina will be joining the team, who was a very high pick that people expect to be a huge offensive contributor. So overall, I feel like this Detroit team could be a sleeper team next year, like both in terms of a team maybe winning more games than people expect, and also in terms of fantasy, maybe you're going to want to draft some of these Red Wings players. So Brian, what do you think about this huge finish for all of these Red Wings superstars?
It's been very exciting to see all these Red Wings superstars blow up unexpectedly. Like these are guys, Anthony Mantha, Tyler Bertuzzi especially, who I had been adding and dropping a lot of the season, like just being like, oh yeah, this is a good stream. Oh yeah, Detroit's got a good schedule this week. And Mantha I actually rolled with for a few weeks not so long ago before he went on his most recent cold run, which was followed by a red hot run, red hot wing. It's nice to see Anthony Mantha and Andreas Athanasiou. They finally got the bumps in ice time this year that we've been waiting for them to get for at least the last year and a half, talking about how they have potential and upside and they just need to play. And I guess some credit to Detroit coach Jeff Blashill for making that happen. And also keep in mind, Mantha and Athanasiou don't just have room to grow deployment-wise, they have room to grow talent-wise, age-wise. They're both going to be another year older next season. That's how time works. They'll be 25 years old, and I think it's safe to expect that they can take another step forward, especially with Gustav Nyquist not in the picture.
Oh.
You didn't go the scary route.
What? Sorry?
You didn't say that, like, you didn't really commit to your scary prediction.
I said they'll be a potentially really strong offensive team next season and maybe win more games than... Okay. Do you want to keep going, or?
No, I thought you'd go harder on that and I was going to respond, but that's okay. I'll pick it up.
I'm going off the cuff.
I'll pick it up. As for them being potentially better offensively, well, I think those are 2 reasons why. Filip Zadina is a third, but on the Patreon cast, you said that Detroit was actually going to be a scary team next year. And yeah, I kind of scoffed at that assertion. They're going to need more than a line's worth of players to be really scary, right? There's Larkin, Mantha, Athanasiou, Count Bertuzzi in there too. And then after that, like try and name Red Wings. You've got Darren Helm, Taro Hirose, who is not going to be a 7 points in 10 games kind of guy. At least I don't think so. Then you've got Martin Frk, Christopher N., two guys with 3-letter last names. Kuffner, I forget his first name. Luke Witkowski.
I mean,
who are these guys? Yeah. How is... What?
Who was like Tyler Bertuzzi a couple years ago? Like they're young players.
We knew who he was coming into this year, and yes, this is the kids getting a shot. But I'm also saying that none of these guys really have a pedigree or have a whole lot of upside expected of them. So for Detroit to be scary, I think they'll need more than a line and a half or a line and 2/3 of quality offensive pressure. Same issue on defense. Filip Hronek definitely has promise, and if you're hoping that he can step up next year, I don't think you'd be so out of line. The best thing going for Hronek is that the number one obstacle to his power play ascent has their contract finally coming off the books this year. Of course, I'm talking about Nicholas Kronwall. His contract with the Red Wings has finally expired, so I don't know, maybe they'll re-sign him and he'll still be inexplicably up on the top power play. Mike Green is the actual barrier. He's still got another year at just over $5 million. But Hronek is a player who's shown some offensive promise. He showed some chops this year. And the one thing that you see from him that you, or at least that I see, that I wonder how it's going to get mollified if he is good on the power play, is that his game still has some defensive holes. So you wonder how a coach is going to balance the power play privilege with defensive responsibility. But the guy's still just going to turn 22 years old next season. So it's not something to get too down on Hronek for. We can expect him to develop and grow and hopefully take on a bigger role. Absolutely a name to be watching going into next training camp.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that I predict the Red Wings to win the Cup next year, but, you know, I just feel like if these players are as good as they've looked, I was maybe wondering if you were going to say maybe like, you know, Mantha and Bertuzzi and Larkin and you know, Athanasiou aren't as good as they look. You're saying that maybe with this extra ice time, they are showing that they are actually this good as they've shown. I think these are all guys that you're going to want to draft next year, maybe especially Mantha, because we all saw how good Nyquist was playing on Larkin's wing, and now that's Mantha's spot. There's one less person to compete with him, so you'd assume now Mantha can be the Rantanen, maybe to Larkin's McKinnon. And by the way, Colorado doesn't have that many big name players outside of their top three. Really, maybe you could say top 6. And look at them go into the playoffs. Of course, one thing Colorado has that Detroit doesn't have is they've had insane goaltending by Philip Grubauer lately. Jimmy Howard's coming back for another year, and we'll see. He actually had a pretty decent year. I don't think that Detroit could blame Jimmy Howard's play on the reason why they weren't that good, though they were pretty good at the end of the season, except for this like terrible loss to Buffalo, which we don't have to mention. About Hronek, I want to just throw it out there. You know who he reminds me of, not in terms of how he plays, but just the numbers. Remember last year how Eric Gustafsson was really solid? He had like 16 points in 35 games, got power play once sometimes, then going like over the summer, like I wonder if this Gustafsson guy can like take over on that top power play and, you know, play a full season and have a good year. And look at that. He got 60 points. Hronek, kind of the same thing. He came in late. He only played around like 35, 36 games or something like that, around a half point per game, maybe a little less, but we saw him get on the top power play. Maybe next year Hronek is going to be the Gustafsson. So he's definitely a guy that I'll be watching out for. Brian, anything else about the Red Wings, or should we go to number 2 in the best couple point getter overall over the last couple of weeks?
I like your Hronek to Gustafsson comparison, and you've got Mike Green potentially playing the role of Duncan Keith.
Yeah, it all fits. Remember my analogy last year of the Islanders and the Sabres? And like it was supposed to turn out that Casey Middlestat was going to be the Barzal. That didn't really work out, actually, in the end.
Don't bring that up.
I really liked my analogy, so maybe don't go too far with my Gustafsson to Hronek analogy, but we'll see. Okay, so second overall. So I've already knocked out first, third, and fifth, right? In Mantha, Bertuzzi, and Dylan Larkin. Next, second overall, Oliver freaking Bjorkstrand, 7 goals and 2 assists in 7 games. So 7 goals in 7 games, 27 shots. And that includes, of course, his big 1 goal, 2 assist game, the 6-2 win over Ottawa yesterday. I feel like if Columbus is going to have a shot versus Tampa Bay, they're going to be needing the Bjorkstrands of the world, these middle 6 guys to be firing on all cylinders. And hey, right now he is. And of course, they'll also need the big guns like Panarin, Duchesne, and Atkinson to be firing on all cylinders. They'll also need Dubois. They'll also need Bobrovsky to play out of his mind. They're going to need a lot of things to beat Tampa Bay but definitely it's helping that Oliver Bjorkstrand is hot. So has this run at the end of the season made Bjorkstrand someone worth targeting once again as a sleeper next season? Like he only has 30, even with this run, he only ends the season with 36 points. So this run, first of all, really came out of nowhere. And also he still was kind of a bust because Bjorkstrand has been a guy for a couple of years now that we thought maybe was primed for a breakout. Of course, Panarin's probably going to be gone next year. Maybe that could lead to Bjorkstrand getting increased opportunities to get into the top six, maybe get more power play time. So has your opinion of Oliver Bjorkstrand changed after this amazing run to end the season? Or maybe also in general, like, do you care at all about what happens at the end of the season for the last couple of weeks? I feel like you're always saying small sample size, don't worry about it.
No, I do care, especially if we're seeing new habits come out of a player. And that's what we talked about last week with Oliver Bjorkstrand, how he'd suddenly morphed into this shot-taking phenom, or at least he had a 4-game stretch where he threw 19 pucks on net after having averaged fewer than 2 shots per game up until that point this season. And so when we talked about Bjorkstrand last, we wanted to see what he'd do for the next few games if those increased shot totals were a weird blip or a sign of things to come. And I guess the answer was both, because Bjorkstrand kept firing shots on goal for another couple games. He grabbed 11 shots over his next 2 contests, but then he had no shots the game after and only 2 shots in the final game of the season. So that's a big shoulder shrug from me as to what exactly can we expect from Bjorkstrand next season. I'd love to look to him as a guy who could be asked to get more opportunity next year. But remember, that's what we thought heading into this year. And Elon, would you believe that in a year where we hoped he would develop and take a step forward, Bjorkstrand's time on ice actually went down as his production rates went up, which makes it seem like he should be a good candidate to get more ice time, but I'm not convinced he will, because he was not a priority for John Tortorella to play. He was ranked 8th amongst regular Columbus forwards in average time on ice at 5-on-5 per game. He barely played more than Brandon Dubinsky, for Pete's sakes, and Bjorkstrand was also the 10th most regular player, most regular Blue Jacket forward on their power play. So we'll have to watch the playoffs to see if any more clues come out as to what kind of player Bjorkstrand is. I don't expect he'll suddenly see an influx of minutes. He seems pretty locked in that 13-minute range. It would be lovely if he could suddenly get more. And when he gets that extra bump in ice time, that he could pull out the shot-taking Oliver Bjorkstrand, who gets like 4 or 5 shots per game, rather than the guy who gets fewer than 2.
Yeah, it kind of sounds, if I could tease apart what you're saying, it sounds like you're saying it's all about deployment, basically, with him. Like, we've seen that he has some talent.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Oh, you're saying if he only plays 13 minutes, he won't do that well. But
I'm saying in the same deployment, he has been 2 different kinds of player over the first 70 games of the season and a chunk of the last 7 or 8 games of the season, where he had the same minutes and essentially the same line mates and same role. But some of those games he was throwing 4 to 6 shots on goal per game all of a sudden. That's what was helping him get those goals. So even with this constrained deployment, he's been able to show another side of himself that I would love to keep seeing in the playoffs, and that I'd love to keep seeing in more minutes in the playoffs and next regular season, although that we can't count on either yet.
Right. Okay. Well, if you're just saying that that's the whole case, then I would say he's probably not going to keep it up, because whatever, anyone could have a couple good high shot games. If you're telling me he had 7 good shot games out of a whole season, then I wouldn't expect much. But like I said, like a lot could change next year for Columbus, right? Well, all of a sudden you see him
I'm going to say, but if he's doing it and it's working, then maybe that's who he can be. Like, he's still young, right? He's not like some journeyman. This is his age 23 season. So he'll just be turning 24 next year. So he should just be on the front end of his prime, and it would be really lovely if when I see this sort of thing happening, especially with a young player, I wonder, did they get different instructions? And especially the fact that he's been able to score by putting all these shots on net, then maybe it's like hey kid, that's working, keep doing that.
I mean, to be fair, Brian, it's not like getting shots on goal is the easy. It's not as if like, hey, I like how you're taking more shots on goal, keep doing that. They're all trying to, well, except unless you're trying to make pass it to people. So I guess it depends what you're saying, right? Like, I'm sure there's a lot of players who are trying to take shots and just have trouble because they get stopped or their shot gets blocked or they miss the net, and he happened to get all these shots on goal. Did you look into like how many shot attempts versus actual shots? Did you dig into that kind of thing?
Yeah, shot attempts also went up.
Interesting. All right. So yeah, he's the guy we'll have to see for next year. And like I said, there might be some big changes in Columbus. Not only will Panarin be gone, obviously Duchesne, who knows what'll happen with him, but also like Nick Foligno, like how much longer is he sticking around? Like there are some pieces there that could move around. So we'll have to wait and see. Another guy who was super hot at the end of the season, he didn't crack like any top 10 lists or anything, but if you added David Savard as a free agent, like kudos to you, because you got basically a top producing D-man for free right at the end of the season, because he was definitely available a couple of weeks ago. This guy ended the season with 2 goals and 4 assists in 7 games, along with 12 hits, 15 blocks. He just helped you all across the board. He ends the season with only 24 points, which was terrible. Like David Savard is not a offensive contributor. He only had 16 points last year. Somehow he ends at 24 this year, yet he ends the season with 6 points in 7 games. So is this something where you saw something different in his deployment? Is David Savard actually this amazingly offensive player and he just finally got unleashed? Or is this a total aberration and definitely don't draft David Savard next year?
Yeah, I looked for a pattern, didn't find one to explain why he had a few games of relevance. So yeah, I wouldn't, don't get hung up on that.
But still, for sure, a nice lesson. If anyone saw him heating up, that's the time of year where you take a chance on someone. And if you took a chance on David Savard after his first game with a point, maybe you grabbed him because you were liking the consistent hits and blocks, and then you got rewarded with a ton of points to go along with it. Okay, on the other side, on Columbus, we had a couple players who really slowed down at the end. One I'm not too concerned about, but I'll bring it up. Josh Anderson, he was a guy we loved all season long. He went hot, he went cold, but then right when people needed him most, he went cold. Only 1 goal and 1 assist in his final 7 games. Still 27 goals and 47 points overall on this season. So a really successful season for Josh Anderson. And he seems like, to me, someone who could be in line for that Artemi Panarin line 1 left wing spot to play with Dubois and Atkins. I'm not going to guarantee it, but I feel like he's the type of guy that could get a shot there. So he could be, to me, a potential sleeper for next season. But we do have to acknowledge that he let a lot of people down in their fantasy finals if they went to the end of the season.
Also not one of John Tortorella's favorite tools. You'd think Josh Anderson would be one of the guys that Torts likes to use the most. Only Bjorkstrand saw less power play time per game, although that doesn't mean that Torts didn't like him. Anderson was the 4th most used Blue Jackets forward at 5-on-5 this year. He did have a small penalty kill role there, so that was his special teams duty. I actually drafted Josh Anderson. I might have mentioned this a few times over the course of the season. With my last pick in a couple of leagues this year, I dropped him pretty quickly when the results weren't coming, like he was a streamer spot. But I could see him doing similarly well next year, especially if he does get a small bump in deployment. So Josh Anderson should be on fantasy radars. He still seems like somebody who sits around the top of free agency or goes very late in drafts and who just gets tossed around back and forth between free agency as he goes hot and cold.
Yeah, I'll say that for our joint league, Brian, which ended 2 weeks ago, he was one of our MVPs. We picked him up out of free agency, and he was scorching for those, I guess, the 4th last and 3rd last weeks of the actual NHL season. So he was great. But yeah, went cold right at the end there. Adam is saying in the chat room he's a nice player, but he's got nothing on the power play. So I'm not saying he's going to like step in and be Artemi Panarin. Even if he could just take that top line spot and, you know, get the same power play deployment, that would still be probably enough to get him to maybe 50, 55 points, especially in this new NHL where everyone gets above 50 points. Doesn't even take that much. Though one guy who really disappeared, not only at the end of the season, but kind of overall, but mainly at the end of the season, Zach Werenski. Where the hell did this guy go? He ends the season with only 2 assists in his final 9 games. He ended, overall 44 points. That's a pretty good season. So I shouldn't, if anything, that goes to show how well he was doing before this final 9 games, but he was definitely not there for his owners when it counted. It'll be really tough to decide when to draft Zach Werenski next season. He did bump Seth Jones from the top power play for stretches in the second half of the season. So it was looking like Werenski might be able to get back to being this insane rookie that he was when he first started and looking like he was going to be a blue chip stud defenseman. But now I'm just curious to get your current thoughts on Zach Werenski, who clearly is not a reliable guy that you could depend on, as anyone who owned him for these last couple of weeks knows very well.
Yeah, Werenski only pointed in 5 of his last 14 games. In one of those games, he had a 4-point night. So that covered a lot of the lack of production if you're just looking at the full span. The one thing I saw when I looked at Werenski's numbers over the end of the season was that he was steadily seeing 23, 25 minutes a game. And then suddenly with just over a week left, Werenski's time on ice started fluctuating up and down in ways that it hadn't for a while. It went as low as 17 minutes, as high as 28 minutes. So usually, like, if it goes down low, it's like, he's maybe playing injured. And if it goes up way high, it's like, they're trying him in a new role. But neither one lasted, and usually you don't see the two together. So I don't know. I'm just going to put that out there if anyone wants to devise their own theories from it, but something to continue watching through the playoffs. Otherwise, I'm really not thinking that Werenski is any different a player because of that. Still right in the 45-point wheelhouse is where I'd have him.
Yeah, it's going to be so tough to talk about Columbus over the summer. First of all, I'm very excited for the playoffs, I have to say. And I know they got the hardest matchup of any team going up against Tampa in the first round, but I love the Blue Jackets story, how they, brought in these ringers. They're really going for it. I hope they don't just get swept in 4 games. But then in the summer, it'll be very interesting to see what happens on July 1st, what happens with all the unrestricted free agents. And then we'll have a whole conversation with even guys like Werenski, right? Like in his first season, a big part of his success was that he was getting all these power play points, but that was with Artemi Panarin in the picture, and he might not be there. So yeah, we'll discuss it over the summer for sure. Okay, so 4th overall in total cupful points over the last couple of weeks. This one should be easy. I'm surprised he's not first. Leon Draisaitl, just like Bjorkstrand, he ended the season with 7 goals in his last 7 games to get him to 50 goals overall on the season. He was 1 shy of Ovechkin for the Rocket Richard Trophy. He was so close, but Ovechkin had 51. Draisaitl, a solid 50 goals. I don't think anyone called that going into the year. I thought maybe he could hit 40. I didn't expect him to get 50. So Draisaitl ends the season with a whopping 105 points. This from a guy who, previously, he had never broken 30 goals or 80 points. And then this year he has 50 goals and 105 points. So what are we going to do with Draisaitl next year? Will we be looking at him as a 50 goal, 100+ point guy next year in drafts, or more of the 30-80 guy like we saw him as going into this year? And also, Brian, if you happen to have looked this up, how many of his goals and points came from playing with and without Connor McDavid? Obviously, Leon Draisaitl is an amazing player. You can't get to 50 goals without being so. But I'm just curious, how much did he depend on McDavid to get these amazing numbers this year? And also, I should say, shout out to Connor McDavid. I hope he has a very fast, successful recovery from this leg injury. That really sucks to have seen that right at the end last night. But hopefully he'll be fine. And yeah, let's talk about Draisaitl.
Okay, Draisaitl. So the first question you asked was, who is he? Is he more of a 30-goal, 80-point guy, or is he closer to 105 points as he was this year? And I'm going to say that I think he's closer to the higher end of that. I wonder if that surprises you that I went that route. Well, what did you think I was going to say?
I probably would have said you'd go lower, or maybe do your classic somewhere in the middle. Is this because of the fact that you assume he's going to continue to play a lot of minutes with Connor McDavid?
Well, there's that, but you're also making it sound like he's dependent on McDavid, which, of course, it helps to be playing with the best player in the world. But at the same time, Leon Draisaitl is a very good hockey player in his own right. Is he 105 points good already? That I'm not so sure. And the reason why I'm not sure about it is because he scored on 28 out of 140 of his 5-on-5 shots on goal. That's a 20% conversion rate. His career 5-on-5 shooting percentage to this point was actually in the low 10s area rather than 20. So we can probably knock some goals or at least attribute some of the goals he scored at 5-on-5 to variance. He also saw a rise of a couple percentage points in his power play shooting percentage too. He also, you might say, well, maybe Leon Draisaitl became a better player, became more dangerous. You could say that about his power play production, but you couldn't say that about his 5-on-5, his expected goals for, which you can look up on either Corsica.hockey or Evolving Wild, which we credit at the end of every show. Anyway, Draisaitl's individual expected goals for rates stayed pretty much the same as in past years. So I'm not thinking that he suddenly scored on almost twice as many of his shots because he found a way to become more dangerous. Remember also last year, I feel like the more apt comparison, Elon, was last year, Draisaitl had 70 points with awful power play luck and performance and a dearth of secondary assists at 5-on-5. Remember, he had 23 primary assists, only 7 secondaries. This year, Draisaitl had 105 points with proper power play performance, so that was corrected from last year, but probably too many goals on the whole, most of them coming at even strength. So I'd still have Draisaitl down as above a point per game player. I still like him for 90 points. He's a dominant player when he's on the ice. And yeah, he does get to play with Connor McDavid, which puts me towards the higher end of this 80 to 105 point range. To your question, Elon, about how much quote unquote does he rely on McDavid, which I don't think is the right question here, but you said how many points did he score with McDavid? 87 of Draisaitl's 105 points this year came alongside Connor McDavid. Wow. That's a crazy team right there.
Yeah, well,
and the others still miss the playoffs.
Well, of course, they had two players over 100 points. I think I saw some. Is it annoying when I say that on the podcast? I think I saw somewhere, but like I believe I saw somewhere that they're like one of the first teams to have 200+ point players and not make the playoffs in a long time. Brian, so okay, just to try to tease this out, if you don't have it, it's okay. We can move on. You say that Draisaitl had 87 points with McDavid, which leaves around 20 points without him. Was that like what percentage of his time did he play with and without McDavid? Like I'm just curious to know like how good is he when he's not playing with McDavid? Like what is his point pace when he's not with the best player in the world? Or Dave says maybe top 5 because he says Crosby in the chat room. He's like, oh, I didn't realize he was playing with Crosby.
Well, there aren't 4 players named Sidney Crosby. If that's the route you want to go, and let me finish my sentence now. I'm researching your question.
Okay. I could entertain the crowd while you do.
No, so. I got it.
Okay, good. I had nothing.
What did I say about? Okay, Crosby. And then Draisaitl played roughly 1,200 minutes with Connor McDavid and roughly 600 minutes without, and that's at all strengths.
So he basically had a fifth of the points or a fourth of the points in half the minutes. So definitely he does a lot better when he plays with McDavid. I don't know what that actually tells us. It tells me that he's probably like, if the Oilers ever get enough depth that they could split these guys up and still get points, I feel like Draisaitl's probably closer to like the 70, 80 point player. But that probably won't happen just because who do they have next year? They're going to have to go line one, Zach Cassian, Draisaitl, and McDavid, or some other schmo on that top line.
Yeah, you definitely want to be playing with Connor McDavid, and you can see Draisaitl's numbers be worse without McDavid. Like, McDavid is a game changer for anyone he plays with, even somebody who is really good with Draisaitl. So yeah, if Draisaitl was separated from McDavid, I'd still expect a whole whack of power play points, like 25, 30, hopefully. And then maybe he'd be limited to say 40 at even strength or 50 in the best case scenario.
Yeah, but clearly someone that if he gets picked, if he would have been picked in the first round of a draft this year, a lot of people have been like, what are you taking Draisaitl? And they go, oh, I think he's going to have 50 goals. And you would have been totally laughed at. Next year, you can pick Draisaitl in the first round of a fantasy draft and no one should bat an eye, I don't think.
Except don't expect 50 goals. 40 goals would be very reasonable.
Yeah, definitely. Well, especially because he got 7 goals in his last 7 games. So before that, he was on pace for a lot less and then he just exploded.
That's not quite how it works, though.
Well, how does it work?
Well, like, it's just because of his season-long shooting percentages. It's not because over his last 7 games he had a high shooting percentage.
I guess, but I also would think that I would look at the pace that he was generally putting up and trust that more than the pace he put up in the last 2 weeks of the season. But we're nitpicking. Okay, I want to go to the 5th overall player. Or no, okay, I already said him. Oh, yeah. But okay, so 5th overall, like I said, was Dylan Larkin. And then rounding out the top 10 of top cupful players over the last couple of weeks, we've got Huberdeau at 6th, Pasternak 7th, Radulov 8th, Stamkos 9th, and then Sagan at 10th. We already talked about Huberdeau last week. Amazing season. He kept it going all the way through the fantasy playoffs. So kudos to anyone who drafted Jonathan Huberdeau. He had an amazing year. We'll talk about him more in the summer. I want to talk about David Pasternak quickly. This guy is unreal. He ended the season with 7 goals and 8 assists in 10 games after returning from his thumb injury. Like, he came back. It was as if he was never gone. 15 points in 10 games. He ends the season with 81 points in 66 games overall for a 100-point pace. Welcome to the first round of, I think, all fantasy drafts next year, David Pasternak. I remember last summer I had what I thought was a hot take that I'd rather draft Pasternak over Marchand. I don't even know if that actually, they were pretty even, I guess, throughout the season, but next year that won't be considered a hot take at all. Would it be crazy? Right, tell me if this is too crazy. Would it be crazy for me to say that I think the best is still yet to come from David Pasternak? 100-point pace this year. I feel like he could do even better next year. I could see him contending for the Art Ross with the likes of like McDavid and Kucherov next season. So I'm ready for you to throw a bucket of cold water on me, but I'm loving David Pasternak. It probably helps that I owned him in the couple. He helped lead me to a championship, but it just seems like he's so reliable. Like, I had Braden Point on my team. Pretty reliable, right? He was pretty great, but like David Pasternak, it was like a guarantee every time he played, I was going to get a point or two.
No, I'm not throwing a bucket of cold water on you about Pasternak either. His season was fantastic, and the best news, perfectly sustainable from what I'm looking at. Like, Pasta, had he played a full season, he would have been on pace for 47 goals, which I think is totally legit. He looks like a 100-point player for sure. And do you know how old he is, Elon?
It's like nothing. He's a baby.
He's a baby. He's 22 years old. You can still count that in months. He's so young. So it's not at all out of the question that Pasternak can continue to improve heading into his age 23 season and beyond. Of course, the question about Pasternak with his improvement is that he's got a couple line mates who are a fair amount older than him. You've got Marchand, who's going to be 31 next season. Bergeron's going to be going in his age 34 season. And so you wonder how that washes out. Like if they still play together as a line. Look, I have the utmost faith in both Marchand and Bergeron, but you have to wonder as they get older, the chances of decline, the likelihood of decline is higher. And then you wonder if that washes out whatever individual improvements Pasternak makes. You also wonder how long they play together, as we've seen the Bruins experiment. And that's something I'll be interested to look into in the summer, as to how reliant Pasternak is on Marchand and Bergeron and how much he can do on his own.
Yeah, I've got like two things to throw, like two counterpoints to what you're saying there. First of all, yeah, there were a few games, I guess not too many, like a handful of games where Pasternak was bumped, I wouldn't say bumped, but shuffled to a different line to play with like Krejci and DeBrusk or something. And from what I recall, he was just fine. Like he was still getting points every game. So I get the feeling he would be fine. Not to say that I don't think the same thing about Draisaitl, but maybe we are talking about the difference between an 80-point player and a 100-plus point player. Also, I guess you could count this as a pro or con, but Bergeron and Marchand, you talk about them being a bit old. They both just are coming off their best. They've had their best season this year. Like they're as good as they've ever been. So you almost could say, like Adam in the chat room was saying, the fact that Bergeron and Marchand had their best ever season, maybe that means that Pasternak's going to slow down next year, because what are the odds they'll be able to top that? But on the other hand, what I'm saying is, like, I don't think this age thing should be something to be concerned about. I threw this like crazy theory at you, Brian. We were just chatting. You didn't even respond. I think you were like so just like disinterested in my theory.
Oh, no, I was interested.
I think there might be something to the fact, like a lot of players this year are older, like in their 30s. And I remember when we first started keeping Karlsson, you would talk a lot about aging curves and how like once a player hits their 30s, they tend to like, start regressing in their numbers until they finally like leave the league. But this year, it seems like there's a whole bunch of 30-year-olds, Brent Burns jumps to mind, someone who's also having a career year, like Bergeron and Marchand. Like these guys are in their 30s and doing as good as ever. Here's my theory for why I think this is happening. I think this might be we might need to start adjusting these aging curves. I wonder if the past aging curves will no longer apply, or maybe I'm totally out to lunch here because I'm just making stuff up off the top of my head. But like, obviously, I think there's pros and cons to aging, right? The pro is that you gain more experience. Like Marchand and Bergeron have been in the NHL a long time. They have hockey smarts. Like they know where to go. They know where to be. They're really experienced hockey players. And just like in any job, experience helps you. The downside of aging is you're older, like you have wear and tear, right? Like you've been had a few injuries, you're a little bit slower. But I feel like as the technology improves in terms of rehabilitation and like sports medicine, like I feel like there's less wear and tear on players nowadays. Like maybe in the olden days where you would have like broken a bone or tore a muscle or whatever, and again, now I'm totally out of my element. I know nothing about medicine, but I would assume that back in the day, that would be a serious thing that maybe you would never fully recover from. But now, like, they give you shots of stuff and they have fancy surgeries and cool I don't know what they do, but it seems like these players could come back so fast and be so great. So I just wonder if maybe we're gonna have to adjust these aging curves now, because the medicine is so great and the technology is so great to help players like get to their 30s and not have as much wear and tear on their bodies. But they do have all that great experience that they've accumulated from a full career already in the NHL. So I don't know, just something to throw out there. I don't know. Do you even want to respond, or should we move on and thank our sponsor for this week's episode?
It's a very interesting theory, and when I like, you also have to balance that with how just goal scoring is going up and up and up in the NHL. So you wonder what the connections are there between training and science and recovery and rest and all these extra ways that players are trying to achieve and sustain peak performance. So I'm into your theory, Elon. I don't think the peak performance will change. Like I still think a player's peak years will be the same, but maybe you have a point that decline can be staved off a little longer than it once was. And the only way to find out is to continue tracking it for another 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, I guess. But I would even argue with you about the peak, right? Because my argument is like you get better with experience. But anyways, let's debate that maybe in a summer series episode. We still got a lot of players to cover. All I know is that the Toronto Maple Leafs are in a lot of trouble because they're going to be playing the Boston Bruins, who are going to have Bergeron, Marchand, Pasternak all having come off career seasons, and they're hungry for a cup. And I think it's going to be a really tough series. I can't wait to watch one of these games. What would be really amazing would be to see one of these games live. And speaking of seeing a live NHL playoff game, like I said, I'd love to go to a Leafs Bruins game. And if you ever ever need tickets for that or anything else, make sure to check out our sponsor, SeatGeek. For a long time, buying tickets has been really difficult and annoying with few big companies who don't really care about the customer. Well, SeatGeek, they're a ticket company also, but they're a ticket company where the customer comes first. That's right. The customer comes first, not the shareholders. Okay, now I'm going off book a little bit. Okay, with more than 50,000 five-star reviews in the App Store, SeatGeek is focused on making your experience as easy as possible. SeatGeek pulls in millions of tickets from all over the web, rates each deal on a scale of 1 to 10, and displays them on an interactive seat map so it's easy to find what you're looking for. This is how it works. Green dots are for good deals. Red dots are for overpriced deals. It's that simple. Plus, every purchase is fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets with confidence. Brian, I'm in Toronto, like I said. I want to check out a Leafs playoff game, but you know what? The Leafs aren't the only show in town right now. The Toronto Raptors are about to be starting their playoff run. Looks like they're going to come second in the Eastern Conference in the NBA. If I wanted to go to one of either the Game 3 of Leafs Bruins next week or Game 1 for the Raptors versus TBD, I guess we don't know yet. It looks like this Saturday. Which one do you think would be more expensive?
I'm going to go with Game 1 Raptors.
Guess what? I would have thought that too. You're totally wrong. You could
wow
on SeatGeek, $138 I'm seeing right now to see Game 1 for the Raptors. We're looking at $400 plus to see the Leafs. The Leafs is a hot ticket, but you know what? $407, it's a kind of a bit. How about only $397? Brian, how can our listeners get that great discount?
Yeah, you can save $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase because you listen to us, Keeping Karlsson. SeatGeek supports our show, so why don't you support them too? And this is an incentive to do it. All you need to do is use our promo code KEEPING for $10 off on your first purchase. You can use that for concert tickets, sports, comedy, Elon's favorite, whatever you want. That's promo code KEEPING. Enter it to get $10 off your very first SeatGeek purchase.
Yeah, I actually just went to a comedy show before we started recording. We're off the SeatGeek promotion now. This is just me chatting with my friend Brian here. Okay, Ben Schwartz and Thomas Middleditch. You might know them from, well, Middleditch, from Silicon Valley. Ben Schwartz from, I don't know, Parks and Recreation. A bunch of things. So it was a improv show. Generally, when I go see it, Brian, do you like improv? Like going to see it live?
Yeah.
I find it sometimes awkward. Like I feel like nervous that they're gonna like not be funny or their things aren't landing, and like makes me kind of uncomfortable. I don't know. I've had good experiences watching improv. Generally, it's not my favorite. I saw it was a Schwartz and Middleditch show. I thought I got to get. I don't even know. I didn't even say it was an improv show. I didn't even know what it was gonna be. Sketch comedy, like stand up. They did improv, the funniest improv I've ever seen. I was dying. So funny. I was like thinking like, I hope I could be half as funny on the show tonight. So let's see how I do when we talk about some of these other players who were in the top 10 of forwards for a couple of scores. Well, skaters, but there were no defensemen that cracked the top 10. I mentioned that Radulov and Seguin were both there. And Brian, I got to admit, I haven't watched any Stars games lately. Dallas may be the team where I actually own the fewest players throughout the season in all of my leagues. I don't know why that happened, but generally I watch games of the teams where I have players in my fantasy leagues because I like to cheer on my players. But anyways, Radulov and Seguin look like they almost single-handedly willed this team into the playoffs, like along with their goaltenders like Bishop and Hudobin, I should say. Like again, this is just from the numbers, but like holy cow, Radulov and Seguin. So 5 goals and 6 assists in 7 games for Radulov to end the year. 4 goals and 5 assists for Seguin. So just a huge offensive output to get the Stars all the wins they needed to sneak into the playoffs, get that top wildcard spot. Radulov ends the year with 72 points for the second year in a row, but this time he only played 70 games. Last year it took him 82 games to get to 72 points. This year he paced for a lot higher because he got 72 points in 70 games, over a point per game. 80 points for Seguin on the season, which is his second best ever total. He's actually paced for more a couple of years, but he missed around 10 games in those years where he was pacing for higher. Anyway, like, is there any reason to not expect these guys to keep this up again next year? It seems like Radulov and Seguin are almost like either, but I was going to say, guaranteed to, get you like 70 or 80 points respectively. On the other hand, you got Jamie Benn, who we would have said that about recently. He ends the season with only 2 assists in his final 6 games, so useless in the playoffs if you held on to him. And he ends the season with 53 points overall in 78 games. Just a terrible season for Jamie Benn. Are we looking at this point at Radulov as the clear better pick over Ben in playoff pools and then in next year's drafts? Is Ben done as being a near point per game guy? So yeah, I want to get your take on because I feel like almost I'm contradicting myself. I want to ask you if Radulov and Seguin are locks to be just as good next year. But then on the other hand, we have to counter that with, I thought Jamie Benn was close to a lock and clearly it's not the case. So what's going on with these 3 guys?
Okay, let's start with Alexander Radulov, who saw about 20 minutes a night for the second time in as many years as he spent in Dallas. And one thing I liked about Radulov's season this year is that he shot more than he has in the past. Radulov paced for 244 shots on goal, which would have been about a 30-shot improvement over last season's 82 game total. And while you might say, 30 shots, what's the big deal? Over the course of 82 games, it's not going to help me a whole lot. And you're right. But it still actually is like a pretty reasonable raise in shot total. So good for Alex Radulov for doing something significant that might still not really show up or register on your fantasy scoreboard. One thing you need to watch is Radulov's age. His 33-year-old season is coming up, but you have to love, like Bergeron and Marchand, Radulov stepped it up in his age 32 year. Like he shot more, like I just said, he attempted more shots, put more shots on net than he had in past years, which gives Radulov a nice cushion. So like if he does happen to decline because of his age, maybe he'll just be back at where he was in his age 31 season, which is that was 72 points. That wouldn't be so bad. It was also nice for Radulov. He was able to get more points because more goals were being scored while he was on the ice compared to last season. And in a way that could continue next year in a somewhat sustainable way. Seguin, gonna say he was just more steady as she goes. There was one number that really stuck out for him last year in his disappointing campaign. That was his IPP at 5-on-5. It went down to 55%, which is like what we'd expect really nobody of any relevance playing forward to have. So this year, Seguin was back to his normal, usual self, getting in on 75% of the goals scored while he was on the ice. And so that's why he had such a great season, why I'll still expect him to have another one next year. Jamie Benn is the big question mark, right? What do we do with this guy? Anybody who put big stock in him, especially in a Bangers league, is just like, what was the point of drafting this guy? And the thing is, so I'm looking through his numbers and I'm seeing, well, his 5-on-5 efforts weren't actually so bad. Like Jamie Benn did not have his best season at 5-on-5. We've seen better. Would have been great if he had another, 5, maybe 10 points at 5-on-5, but there wasn't as much room for him to improve on 5-on-5 this year as there was on the power play. I would have loved another 15 points from Jamie Benn on the power play. He had just 11 power play points all season long, and 4 of those 11 points came in Benn's first 3 games of the season. That means Jamie Benn had 7 power play points over his final 75 games of the year. And one of those power play points came in that 75th game. So he had 6 power play points in 74 games. What the heck happened to Jamie Benn's power play production? So first off, for him, he had the thing happen on the power play. First off, the thing that happened to Seguin at 5-on-5 last year happened to Jamie Benn on the power play. His IPP just crashed down to 40%. That's going to go back up. And for what it's worth, Jamie Benn's own expected goals for numbers, he actually posted a career high. And his goals totals on the power play weren't so off. Jamie Benn was just not able to pick up as many apples, but hopefully he will find an orchard full of apples again next season. I would expect a bounce back season for Jamie Benn next year. I'm not going to be so gun shy about him, although I am going to hope that I can grab him, 1, 2, 3 rounds later in this upcoming year's drafts than I would have had to grab him last year.
Well, I think goes without saying you'll be able to get him later next year after, what I say, a 55-point season. Like, this was just a useless season for Jamie Benn. Plus, he leaves 53 points. And plus, like I said, he left a sour taste in his owner's mouth when he left them hanging and dry in the playoffs with only 2 assists in his final 6 games. So I don't laugh at me and not knowing common sayings. But Brian, so you say you expect him to bounce back. Like, how high are we talking? Are we talking point per game, Jamie Benn? Or like he'll get back to being able to get more than 60 points?
I never totally bought into point per game Jamie Benn, but I think 70 points would be a reasonable expectation. Just think, he had 11 power play points this year. I think it's reasonable to expect him to get 20 to 25. So you toss the difference onto his point totals, and that definitely gets him to 65. And hopefully with a little more fortune at 5-on-5, that gets him up and above 70 potentially.
Yeah, I think one thing that you could say is in his favor is that Zuccarello's now in the picture. So they have another good scorer to play with him at even strength. And on the power play, you don't have to depend on the Radek Faxas and the Hintzes of the world. Not that saying that they're not good players, but, it's nice to play with superstar players. And Zuccarello's one of those, or more so than the other two guys I just mentioned.
You're assuming that Dallas re-signed Zuccarello. They did acquire him. The intent was great, right? Let's get somebody else who can be offensively threatening to play in this Dallas top six. But let's remind everyone that Zuccarello is an unrestricted free agent. So we'll see. Dallas gets first crack at him, and we'll see, I guess, how the playoffs go and how the two get along. And it would be a good thing for Jamie Benn if Matt Zuccarello or just some other similarly talented forward was able to be with Ben in the top six.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, for some reason I thought that he re-signed, or he signed with him after he got traded, but I guess not. No, so hopefully Dallas, they've seen that they could use another strong player. I don't think you needed a brilliant genius to tell them that. Obviously, Valeri Nichushkin didn't work out. What did he have? 0 points on the season or 0 goals on the season?
0 goals for Valeri Nichushkin, isn't it? That's terrible.
Yeah,
he's. How deep does your league have to be for Nichushkin to get drafted next year? 65 shots in 57 games, 10 assists. That's it.
Yeah, I guess he'll be drafted around Tobias Reeder next year. I feel like those two will be neck and neck, the 0 goal wonders. Okay, so we're rounding out this top 10 in a couple of points over the last couple of weeks. I already said Seguin, who was number 10. Number 9, Steven Stamkos, 6 goals and 3 assists in his final 6 games. We both projected him for 90 points on the season. He ended with 98. I think our projections would overall would look a lot better if we were to apply like a 10% inflation to each of them for the increase in goal scoring this year. But yeah, Stamkos pretty much, I'm going to give it to us for projecting that he was going to keep it up. But obviously that wasn't a very hard projection to make. I honestly can't really think of anything else to say about Steven Stamkos, or for that matter, 120-point Nikita Kucherov. I don't think we need to spend 5 minutes talking about how great these guys are. If anything, I'd rather spend our Tampa time talking about Mikhail Sergachev, who ended the season with 7 points in 5 games, saw a nice time on ice increase when Victor Hedman was out. It was overall a very disappointing season for Sergachev. We both pegged him in the almanac to hit 40 points, but he only got to 32 in 75 games. What do we think about Sergachev at this point? Do you see him as a potential breakout star next year? He's still only 20 years old, right? He had 40 points last season. I guess it's like a 19 or 18-year-old. Now he'll be, 21 next year. He's had now a season of 40 points, a season of 32 points, but he ended this year strong. I feel like I'd rather have him than Jonathan Drouin, who we've talked about in previous episodes as really having dropped the ball on the Habs. But yeah, so maybe the Habs would want to do over on that. But what do you think about Sergachev for next season? Do you think that he's someone who people should be drafting as a sleeper?
I don't think that he should be drafted as a sleeper in leagues that have more than 4 defensemen deep. I think he could be a really valuable pick in that scenario. But in leagues who have 3-4 defensemen, he's probably that 3rd or 4th guy. The reason that Sergachev did not reach last year's heights is I'll go to his performance on the power play, is essentially he lost all those. What was the difference in points, Elon? Can you say it again?
He had 40 points 2 seasons ago and then 32 points this season.
Okay. Yeah. So last season, this is the awkward point where we don't know how to refer to each season. So I'm going to say in 2017-18, Sergachev had 16 power play points. In 18-19, Sergachev had just 6 power play points. And there's 2 reasons that he lost 10 power play points between those 2 seasons. The first is in his own numbers on the power play. He wasn't so much the bombs away guy from the point that he'd been 2 seasons ago. This past season, his average power play time on ice was down a smidge. He wasn't taking as many shots. I think I covered that his IBP wasn't as high. His numbers this year were a mix of regression from the year before and just less involvement. So those were a couple elements working against Mikhail Sergachev, but I don't know if either one was as critical to his power play success or lack thereof than a fellow by the name of Braden Point having graduated from the 2nd unit to the top unit full time this season. 2 seasons ago, Sergachev got to play with Braden Point for most of his power play time. This year, Sergachev was generally playing with Tyler Johnson, Yanni Gourde, Alex Killorn were his most common power play line mates. So Sergachev can't or no defenseman can really put up 16 power play points from the second unit every single year. And it's even more unlikely to do when the top personnel leave your unit and your own numbers aren't bloated or inflated enough to compensate for that player's absence. So I wouldn't expect Sergachev to blow the doors off for as long as he's on the second power play unit. Maybe he can still get back to 40, definitely in the 35 to 40 range. No problem with him there, which still makes him a decent depth pick in the future. But I wouldn't be expecting a 45-point player so long as he remains away from the top power play players.
Yeah, I guess it's the kind of thing, Brian, where, and it's fair, this is not a judgment, but I feel like you're never going to get Sergachev right, because if we know that he's going to be on the top power play, I feel like he won't be on the top power play until he is, if that makes sense. And so like, you're going to get it right until eventually you're totally off. And if we think that he has the potential to get like 60 points, which it seems like he might be, I feel like really in the end, like all of your analysis is really good. But to me, it's like when he's playing 16, 17 minutes a game, you can't expect too much. But we saw with Hedman out, he got that bump, which I really like to see. Of course, Tampa didn't have much to play for. Like maybe if they were actually needing to win these games and not just try to see what they have going into the playoffs, maybe they would have done things differently. I feel like once we get the confidence that Cooper is going to play Sergachev, 20 minutes plus per game, regardless, it's hard to expect too much from him, but I think that the potential is there for him to be a really fantasy relevant player. And we saw Ryan McDonough having a great fantasy playoffs, even from the second power play. And like Tampa scores so many goals that you don't need that much power play time to still get you 40, 45, maybe even 50 points if everything breaks right. But Sergachev's going to need more ice time. He's still really young, like I said, so we'll see what happens. I'm holding out hope for him. I'd definitely grab him with a late pick next year if I could get him.
Do you think Sergachev gets on the top power play unit for as long as Hedman is there?
Probably not, unless they go with two defensemen, or unless they maybe split the two power plays. Like Toronto a couple seasons ago had like Morgan Rielly and Jake Gardiner both each on a power play, and they both got like close to 50 points, or I think they both broke. I know that Gardiner had 50 points, so I feel like there's ways for Sergachev to get up to 50 points with Hedman in the picture, but I think part of that is going to involve him playing more than 20 minutes a game consistently.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's probably the best case scenario for Sergachev, at least in the next handful of years, that he gets to play on a good second power play unit. And that all depends on if Tampa can amass the personnel to fill two power play units, which they're not far from doing. But I really think that's the only scenario in which he can get reliably 15 power play points or more in a season.
Yeah, so, hey, he doesn't need to get like 70 points or 60 points to be totally fantasy relevant. Like if he could hit 45, I think that would be a really nice year. But okay, so let's move on from the top 10 overall. Let's look at the top 10 defensemen. Or actually, I'm going to tell you 7. Okay, we talked about David Savard, who had an amazing end of the season. There were 7 defensemen who had more points in the last couple of weeks over David Savard. So here are the 7 players who had more points than David Savard in the last couple of weeks in the couple. We've got Pietrangelo, Barrie, Trouba, who we've talked about a lot. Brian's finally come around on Jacob Trouba while he's on the top power play, of course. Alex Edler, Gustafsson, Brent Burns, and number 1, Dougie Hamilton was the most valuable defenseman in the couple for the last couple of weeks. What an end to the season for Hamilton. Brian, so let's talk about him, then you could decide if you want to touch on any of these other defensemen. But I want to focus on Dougie here. He ends the season with 4 goals and 2 assists in his final 7 games, along with 18 hits and 22 shots. So he's helping you all across the board. Hamilton is starting to fall into a bit of a pattern. It seems to me like he was, again, super quiet at the start of the season. He had 10 points in his first 38 games, then ended super strong with 29 points in his final 44 games. If he would have done that all season, that would have been a 54-point pace. But Hamilton ends with only 39 points overall. So it's actually his worst season since being back in Boston. Like his second year of his career was worse. After that, he was always above 39 points. This year, only 39. But hey, if that 54-point pace that he put up in the second half of this season, if he could have done that all year, that would have been good for his best pace ever. So it's really hard for me, like as always, it seems with Dougie Hamilton, to project like, who is this guy? Like I feel like we always get him wrong at the start and end up being kind of right by the end. But like I feel like I want to recommend to people that Dougie Hamilton's a great guy to draft in playoff pools. He's a great guy to draft next year, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he starts the season cold again, and I have no idea why he does that. The crazy thing is he ended the season, like I said, in a 54-point pace, but I don't think he bumped Justin Falk from that top power play. He did this all from the second power play, which isn't too bad, by the way. It's got like Svechnikov and Jordan Staal. Like it's not a dearth of talent, and that's why I think Carolina could actually be a scary team for the Capitals in the first round, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But Brian, what do you think about Dougie Hamilton's amazing finish to the season? Not only the past couple of weeks, but basically the second half of the year. And you're muted, though.
He looked great, and this is the Dougie Hamilton we hoped we'd see at the start of the year. He didn't come out right away, but eventually he did, and thank goodness for that. Actually, Elon, to go on a bit of a tangent, there's like a theme this year of playoff MVPs having been guys who were on the outs earlier in the season. Hamilton's one of them. You mentioned how he started crummy and then picked it up. Look at some of the other top performers over the fantasy playoffs. You've got Steven Stamkos, who we had people panicking about. I remember sending some buy low offers on Stamkos at the start of the season because he had 5 points in 10 games to begin the year. He finished with 19 points over his last 12. Tyler Seguin, we just talked about, had 16 points in 27 games from mid-October to mid-December, 15 points in his last 10 games to finish the season. Vladimir Tarasenko, 10 points. I don't really need to rehash him because he was probably the most asked about player to us all season long. He had 10 points in 26 games during a 2-month cold snap. Finished the season with 14 points in his last 12. Sergei Bobrovsky, who we might get to in a bit, also fits this pattern of a guy who stunk at some point, but these are all stars who we can rely on. And I think the lesson is if you have one of these guys, try to hang on. Things will get better. Although Hamilton's name doesn't quite ascend to the status of Stamkos, Seguin, Tarasenko, and Bobrovsky as a goalie is a whole other thing. And there's probably, I can think of one counterexample of a star name who, if you hung on, you really paid for it. Is that who you're eager to jump in with, Elon?
No, tell me yours. I've got one also.
Oh, Patrick Laine is the guy that if you hung on to him or bought low on, that did bite you. But these other guys, these guys are superstars for a reason, right? I think 9 times out of 10, they're going to deliver.
Well, we talked about someone on this episode already who didn't deliver, Jamie Benn, right? He was a huge disappointment.
Yeah.
So it's no guarantee.
But I wouldn't put him up there. I'm talking point per game players.
I see.
Okay, and I don't know that I projected Jamie Benn to be a point per game player.
I mean, now you're getting nitpicky because I think players who have gotten point per game in multiple seasons should count as point per game players.
I don't think I had him there this season, but I had the other guys there. Anyway.
So if you're thinking of dropping a star, you have to tweet at Brian and ask, do you see this guy as a point per game player? And then if he says no, then it's okay, maybe. But if not, hold on. That's your advice.
Okay. I'm just trying to divine a lesson from all this. Yeah. That's the best I could do.
I think it's a good lesson. I wanted to have a whole segment. Maybe we'll get to it at the end.
Yeah, I was ready for it. That's why I had all that information.
All right, well, it's been an hour. We still have a lot to get to. Maybe I know people also don't like it. I know when I listen to podcasts, I don't like it when the hosts start rushing or teasing things they don't get to. So we'll do some lessons at the end. And there's one of Brian's lessons. Hold on to your stars. Sometimes it'll bite you, but I guess overall it should work out most of the time. Though one of my lessons was going to say, don't be afraid to drop people. So maybe we'll have to debate that a little bit.
Both can be true.
Well, sure, both can be true, and then you have no idea what to do when the situation comes up.
So I think my advice is more hold a guy when he's struggling at the front end of the season. But yeah, there's less rope at the end.
Oh, yes. Okay, in that case, yeah, I totally agree. That's my favorite thing in fantasy, to be a scavenger, and in the first month or two of the season, wait for all these slumping stars to get dropped, and then scoop them up, and then you'll have them for the end. Yeah, for sure. You got to hold on to the big-name players that you drafted early. Or at least try to trade them for something, I had Matt Murray. I mentioned, I think on a previous podcast or on some show that we did, I was trying to trade him when he was crappy in November. I'm not going to lie. I'm really happy no one took any of my offers, but my offers weren't total garbage, right? I was trying to get something of value for him. I wasn't considering dropping him outright just because I knew what the upside was and I drafted him so high. Anyways, speaking of Murray, let's go to goalies. So who were the top goalies in the Cupful over the last couple of weeks? There are 7 that broke 40 Cupful points, and we count actually saves a lot more than wins, and we count goals against again. So we look more at goalie performance, and the goalie who performed the best, just barely, at number 1. I'm saying compared to number 2, but he was amazing. Sergei Bobrovsky. Wow, what an end of the season for Bobrovsky. 6 wins in his final 7 games, including 3 shutouts. Just to be a jerk, I will say that those wins came against Vancouver, the Islanders, Montreal, Nashville, Buffalo, and the Rangers. So not exactly the highest scoring of teams, not to take anything away from Bobrovsky's amazing previous 2 weeks, but I feel like it might be a little harder for him when he goes against the Tampa Bay Lightning for 4+ games over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully he can at least be slight, like similar in the slightest way to how he's been lately, because he's going to need to be that and a lot more to help the Blue Jackets get past the Lightning. My guess is that he's going to blow it. That's what I've seen in the past. I'd be very surprised if Bobrovsky could keep up these shutouts in these 920 plus save percentage games against the Lightning, but curious to know what you think.
Of course, he's in tougher against the Lightning. I think any team, like the Lightning have just been a dominant force in our, what did we call it? Our playoff team picking auction draft. So on our last Patron cast, we had a segment where Elon, you, me, and Ultimate Cupful champ Dave had a $20 or $30 budget, and we each picked teams auction style to win the cup. So Tampa, I spent $19 on. I think the next highest anyone spent on another team was $11. So I spent a good chunk of my budget. I think essentially if you're trying to project the playoffs this year, it's Tampa Bay or the field. That's what it comes down to. Tampa Bay, 62 wins this year. I think it's the most since the Red Wings back in 95, 96, if I have my numbers right. Of course, the Red Wings did not win the cup that year. So maybe the same happens. Who knows, right? That's why they play the games. I'm very excited to watch the playoffs. But Sergei Bobrovsky will be in tough to prove his playoff trouble record wrong. Right? Like, this is a really tough assignment. If he's trying to shake a stigma that follows him that he can't perform in the playoffs, at least on the bright side, maybe it's like everyone will just forgive it. It's like, it was the Lightning. What was he supposed to do?
Yeah, that's fair. By the way, Brian, I love that's like a classic Brian Com way of speaking, where you do that like one word a second when you're like sort of trying to show that you're not sure what words to say. I love when you do that. Can I nitpick again also just for fun?
Do it.
I would say it's not Lightning versus the field 50-50. I'm going to go by Dom Lucian, who we've had on the podcast, always projects these like odds to win the cup and all these things. So he had a tweet recently of his like super, he ran it through the computer. He got all the bleep bloops happening to figure out what are the odds of each team to win the Stanley Cup based on, I don't know, God knows what. He's got the Lightning at 26% chance to win. And then after that, you've got like, I guess, I don't know, 12% for Nashville. And you could go see the tweet. All that to say that I wouldn't say it's 50-50. I'd say 26%. So, Brian, obviously you made a smart. I think you were good in that draft.
I didn't say it was 50-50 either.
Well, you said it was like Lightning versus the field. Made me think it's like 1v1. But anyway.
It doesn't mean they have equal chances.
Yeah, I actually really like the Boston Bruins, who I think will play them in round 2. Sorry to the Leafs fans out there, but I think that could be a really good series. But I think this first series could be good too. But we'll get to our playoff preview soon. I wanted to talk about some more of these goalies who were really great at the end of the season. Number 2, Brian, your friend and mine, Darcy Kuemper, ends the season with 7 wins in a row. 7 games in a row, letting in 2 or fewer goals. He didn't win all those games because Arizona totally forgot how to score. Maybe they never knew. But yeah, overall, like I said, 7 games in a row of 2 or fewer goals. That is an MVP right there. That's a goal you can rely on. He ends the season with a .925 save percentage in 55 games overall. This is after a .920 save percentage in 29 games last season. So we're approaching almost 100 games of Darcy Kuemper being a well above average goalie in the NHL. And actually, Brian, just to make you especially mad at me, I'm going to go ahead and make my argument for why maybe Darcy Kuemper should be considered in the running for the Vezina trophy this season. Here, I know you're probably getting mad, but hear me out.
I'm not. Why do you think I'm getting mad? You've like completely ignored the last 3 times we've talked about Darcy Kuemper on that. You just prefer it. It's easier to play off of me if I hate Darcy Kuemper.
All right, so you're with me? He's going to win the Vezina?
I'm listening to your argument without rage.
Okay. So, first of all, you might say, he didn't play like that many games, so maybe he doesn't deserve to win it. Like, he wasn't the starter to start the year. Guess what? He actually played 2 more games than Andrei Vasilevsky, who I think is a lot of people's front runners. And also, Kuemper and Vasilevsky, they both had the same save percentage on the season. They both had a .925. Vasilevsky had 12 more wins, of course, but I don't think you could blame that on Darcy Kuemper. If anything, you might want to say that Vasilevsky maybe had an easier go at it. Not to say Arizona is actually a really good defensive team, but Darcy Kuemper, playing on Arizona, probably not as easy as Vasilevsky playing on Tampa. I feel like a lot of goalies on Tampa would get a lot of wins at the very least. Vasilevsky, not to take anything away from him, he's, I think, the biggest competition. Because, like, who else really is there to compete with these 2 guys? You've got Ben Bishop and Robin Lehner. They both put up better save percentages .934 and .930 respectively, but both only played in 46 games compared to 55 for Kemper, like I said, and 53 for Vasilevsky. So I feel like we're starting to border on maybe not enough games. You've got Binnington, who was also amazing. He only played 32 games. Matt Murray ended the season with a .919 save percentage, playing 50 games. So I don't think he compares. Carey Price ended strong, but only .918 overall. Rene, .918 save percentage. I don't know. To me, I think it might be between Kemper and Vasilevsky, and I probably would vote Vasilevsky if I. Brian, do you think we're ever going to get credentials as hockey media so that we can vote on these trophies? I don't know. If I had to vote, I'd probably vote Vasilevsky, but I think an argument could be made for Darcy Kemper.
I think an argument, I can't disagree. He has the same save. You made a very good case. 2 more games played, same save percentage. You mentioned who had the easier or more difficult workload. Well, I will tell you that Kemper and Vasilevsky were the third and second most well-protected goalie at 5-on-5 this year in the league. So both their defenses did phenomenal jobs in front of them, protecting them. Elon, I'll give you a guess. You have a 1 in 29 shot. Can you name the goalie who was best protected by their team this year, who played at least 1,000 minutes?
John Gibson. No, I'm just kidding. Definitely not.
Yeah.
Definitely not the Anaheim Ducks.
The worst. Devin Dubnyk.
Okay, I was going to actually take a guess, but it wouldn't have been Dubnyk, so I'm glad that you just went and told us the answer there. Well, that's too bad, because he definitely is not in Vezina consideration.
You've got a lot of really interesting. Elon, did you mention Bishop and Lehner?
I said that they both had the best save percentages, but maybe they could be disqualified for not playing enough games. I'm sure one of them, like maybe Lehner or Bishop. Like the thing is, just with the injuries, like I don't know what the cutoff is for these things of how many games you need to play to be considered a Vezina candidate.
Yeah, if you're gonna go, which Vezina voters don't, but if you're going for success above expected save percentage at 5-on-5, at least that's one of the metrics I would put a lot of weight in if I was a Vezina voter. Jordan Binnington, Yaroslav Halak, Ben Bishop, your top 3. John Gibson's in the top 5. Then Lehner, Mrazek, Jack Campbell. What a year for goaltending!
Yeah, it was crazy. Jack Campbell's one of the people in the top 7 over the past couple of weeks. He was a couple MVP. We've got Lehner. So I already mentioned Bobrovsky and Kemper. Then there was Lehner. Then the final group is Jack Campbell, Alex Georgiev, Philip Grubauer, and then Braden Holtby at the end. So Holtby's not so surprising, but would anyone have guessed that Campbell, Georgiev, and Grubauer would end up being fantasy playoff MVPs a few months ago? Like, no way. At this point, Grubauer is obviously the best bet of the 3. If we're looking into next season, so now I'm looking at Campbell, Georgiev, Grubauer. If we're looking to next season, what do we do with these guys? Do we consider them worth drafting next year? I think Grubauer is the obvious bet. Varlamov is going to be a free agent. I don't see a reason why the Avalanche are going to re-sign him based on how things ended. Maybe Pavel Francouz will earn a spot on the team next year and be the backup, which makes me then ask almost like, well, maybe you could let me know if you disagree, but like I'd be curious to know, like at this point, where would you be ranking Grubauer and Schmor Golisborg next season? He ended the season so strong, but he was cold for a while, but he was great all those years in Washington. If he comes in as the for sure number 1 goalie on Colorado, which I think he's going to be, that's got to be a pretty valuable goalie in fantasy, right? He could play a lot of games.
Yeah, for sure. And let's wait to see. You said like based on how things ended, we don't know. We doubt Varlamov will be coming back, and I agree, but we still have a playoff series against Calgary to go where we might see some things happen that influence how Colorado approaches their goaltending next year. I don't think Pavel Francouz is much of a threat to Philip Grubauer. Then again, I didn't expect Philip Grubauer to be so awful for the first like 2/3 of the season, but I'm hoping he can have a good series, establish himself as someone Colorado can rely on. And then next year, it's just like we can all know Philip Grubauer is a starting goalie in Colorado instead of having yet another fuzzy goaltending situation to start the year.
Yeah, I was not trying to say that I think Francouz can be competition for Grubauer. I was saying Francouz is competition for Varlamov, in that Colorado doesn't need to sign Varlamov or another goalie. They could just have Francouz be their backup. That's what I was saying about Francouz.
Noted. I mean, I don't think it would behoove Colorado financially to pay both Grubauer and Varlamov money.
Yeah, and Varlamov he's a tough goalie. Like I don't know how. I mean, I guess if Koskinen could get $5 million, you'd assume Varlamov should maybe be able to get the same. But maybe other GMs aren't going to be as willing to open up their wallets to a goalie who kind of struggled this year and has had all this injury history. I feel like Varlamov would be a really tough signing to make at this time for more than like a year. Like I could see him getting big money for like a single season for a team wanting to take a chance, but I doubt he's going to get term. But we'll see. Like that's actually a really fun part of the season. July 1st is one of our hottest podcasts, at least the one that I'm most excited for, where we break down all the signings. But then, yeah, Jack Campbell, Alex Georgiev, both really interesting to me. Both of them did better than their respective starters in terms of save percentage over on the season. But at the same time, it's hard to imagine Lundqvist and Quick becoming backups next year. So if we had to do Schmore Goaliesborg right now and start tiering these goalies, what are your early thoughts on how you'll be valuing these LA and New York tandems going into drafts next year?
Man, I don't know. I mean, well, LA we know has a coaching change happening, and I think depending on who they hire, or maybe not depending on who they hire, but when they hire their new coach, we'll get a signal of what exactly their plan is in the short term, whether they're going to go into a full-on rebuild or try and rebuild on the fly if such a thing can actually happen, or if they're going to bring in someone who thinks that, yeah, they're actually going to compete the whole way through. In New York, the plan is pretty clear. They're not going to be a great team for a couple of years. They're going to wait and buy their time to draft some good guys and let their prospects develop. And like Henrik Lundqvist is in a very weird space. Elon, you don't agree? You're shaking your head and laughing.
Yeah, I am shaking my head and laughing because they're the New York Rangers, and I'll bet you if Jade from Average Time on Ice was listening, she would say they're about to sign Karlsson and Panarin, and everything you're saying is not going to age well. Like the Rangers have money, and I don't think they're so far off.
Panarin and Bobrovsky are joining Quenneville in Florida is the latest, hot rumor going around. So let's wait and see about that before we say that either one is going to land with the Rangers, who are definitely rebuilding.
Okay, but let me just say, Brian, okay, I'm just going to say sentences and you tell me if you think this is true or not true, okay?
Yeah.
Sentence number 1. If the Rangers got like a top end player like Artemi Panarin, would that be enough to make them a playoff contender? I'm not saying like a guaranteed playoff team, but could that make them a contender? Is it possible?
It's possible.
Okay.
Like they finished 20 points out of a playoff spot this year. So I don't think that Artemi Panarin is worth 20 standings points.
Well, I don't know. Okay. Question number 2. Are the New York Rangers a popular place for free agents to sign, according to previous history of free agent signings?
I mean, there was a time where, like, definitely when the salary cap wasn't in place, like, I want to say yes, but I also don't, like, I'm trying to think of the last high profile free agent the Rangers signed. Yeah, like it is Shattenkirk. And like, can you think of another name on the team who was brought in like as a marquee player?
Brian Boyle?
Was he?
No, he was Dan Boyle.
Yeah, and then he was ridden out of town by the press. He was not liked there.
And I'm just saying, anyways, I agree with you. Probably the Rangers are not going to contend next year, but I just say don't say it 100% because I could see them just getting antsy and being like, you know what, F this rebuild. Let's sign some players at free agency. Like I think they have the cap space, right?
Probably.
Well, anyway, okay. You're saying about Georgiev, assuming that the Rangers are not going to sign great free agents, that he's going to be a goalie competing for starts on a rebuilding team. Same with Jack Campbell. So where are you landing on these guys? Sorry for the sidetrack.
Where I'm landing with these guys is I will be happy to stream them, as I will be about 75% of all the goalies next year. I think like everything is going to change next year with the way people treat goalies, and that'll be the year where like suddenly 25 clear-cut starters emerge with very consistent records.
Yeah. Well, I would say my lesson, and again, I agree with you that probably things will change for next year, but if anything, my lesson is like maybe it's better, and I've always been against in the past grabbing tandems in drafts. I feel like why use 2 spots when you could just have 2 potential starters? But now I'm thinking when it's so hard to get a for sure starter, like people who drafted Leonard and Grice late in drafts this year, just like killed it. They were so lucky. And some people got really lucky and got like, let's say Varlamov and Grubauer, and then they were able to drop Varlamov before the fantasy playoffs and just ride Grubauer. So, I wonder if maybe the strategy next year will be like, don't draft goalies high because you have no idea how it's going to turn out. So use your high picks on forwards and defensemen. And then like late in the draft, grab Quick and Jack Campbell, and then they could fight it out and hope that LA could do something. And maybe you could turn out with 2 decent goalies or maybe even 1 starting goalie. And it could work out for you. So I don't know. That might be something to consider.
But LA is much further away from being a good team than the Islanders are.
I mean, a lot of people we'll have to go. I want to go back and listen to the Almanac.
Yeah, where I famously talked about the Islanders tax.
Yeah, you were really down on the Islanders after their free agent signings.
I was not optimistic.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, you never know, right? Like, that's the thing with goalies. You never know who's going to have a good season. So I feel like there might be some strategy to just grab a tandem late. You get all the starts from that team and hope that team will be good. And if not, you'll just find a Binnington in free agency and win that way. You got to find a way to win. That would be another one of my tips for succeeding in the fantasy playoffs. If we ever get to that segment, is you've got to be quick to grab these goalies. Maybe that's even before the playoffs, but like, don't worry about the draft so much as far as goalies. Just be the first one to grab the Binnington, to grab the Grubauer when they start playing well. And if it doesn't work out, whatever, you could drop him, but there's a chance they could end up being the guys who lead you to that. Darcy Kemper, I grabbed him out of free agency in a couple of leagues, and we all know how that turned out. Brian, so how about a few LVPs in the last couple of weeks to round out our player discussions before we go to our playoff preview box pool filling? We got a lot to get to. I'm so excited. So yeah, players who stunk that I want to get your thoughts on. So we already talked about Ben and Werenski. I'll throw a couple other high percentage owned players who put up less than 20 cupful points in the last couple of weeks. You actually already brought this guy up, Patrick Laine. Ended the season going pointless in his last 7 games. Only 1 shot in each of his last 3 games, which is like, at least when Laine wasn't getting points, like, this is getting shots. It's just having bad luck. But here he was doing nothing. And like, remember, or like, I just feel like he's the type of guy, like when you're talking about playoff pool strategy or playoff strategies, like you have to make that tough drop. I feel like the smart owners dropped Patrick Laine, as tough as it is. He like was so slow for so long, and he did nothing in the last couple of weeks. Probably a guy that people who won their leagues dropped him if they had him leading into the playoffs. Brian, like, in your opinion, how much has Laine's stock dropped for you in your book for next year? Like, we pegged him for 80 points in the Almanac, one of our biggest misses, and he ended up with only 50 points. And even that 50 points almost seems like unreasonable, like based on what we've seen from him the last couple of months. Like, that's buoyed from a good couple of weeks almost completely, a decent start to the season, but he's been so quiet since. So where are you pegging Patrick Laine moving forward?
Man, I don't know. Like, this is just this guy's season made our heads spin, right? We were so high on him and talked him up so much, or at least I did, in all our preseason stuff, in our Almanac. And I don't even know what to say about him. Like, I'm trying to assess what went wrong with him. And like, I don't have a lot of detail aside from saying that Laine simply was just not as dangerous at 5-on-5, both in quality and quantity. You see some variance dragged him too, like his shooting percentage dropped 5%. But that shouldn't have been enough to destroy his season as badly as it was. I was hoping for 50 goals from him. He ended the season with 30 goals, 20 assists for, as you said, 50 points. We anticipated a big rise in deployment for Laine. That didn't happen. He only saw 12 more seconds per game at 5-on-5. This is not what we hoped for. So even if he did get the extra time, I'm still not even convinced he would have made the most of it. He had a bad year. He didn't have a lot of, like, you look at his goals for per 60 minutes while he's on the ice, not his personal, but his whole line's goals per 60 minutes. And it was down pretty significantly from the last couple of years. And it's hard at this point to tease that apart, how much of that is his fault and how much of that belongs to, the roles of his line mates. So that'll be some more off-season questioning that we'll have to dig into. But for now, all I can say is it was just, it was a rotten year. It shows in his numbers. He was not just simply unlucky. He was also not good. So it's kind of back to the drawing board for him.
Who are you drafting higher next year, Jamie Benn or Patrick Laine?
Patrick Laine.
Okay.
I still believe. I really do. Like, I will probably end up with him in too many leagues next year because I think a lot of people are going to be really shy about him, and I'm not cooled off so significantly.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
Jamie Benn's probably the safer bet.
Yeah, well, even though it wasn't so great at the end either. Yeah, it's tough. Like 50, what is it, 53 points for Ben at the end of the season compared to 50 for Line. So very similar. Yeah, Line is going to be tough, but there's so much upside. It's just so hard not to take him just for that chance that he looked like he could be a potential 50-point guy, and I think he still can be, but he's clearly got some things to work on, and it'll be fun to read articles throughout the offseason of what he's doing. Patrik Laine says he's in the best shape. He's done a whole new training regimen. He's totally rewired his brain. Remember that article that you loved, Brian, about goalies rewiring their brains?
Yeah.
I think it was, who was it? Reimer that rewired his brain? I don't know, it was some funny goalie that turned out.
No, it was Hellebuck.
Okay. Oh,
and I guess the wiring broke this season. Or...
yeah, well, we'll see how he does in the playoffs. Elias
Call the brain electrician.
Elias Lindholm just 1 assist in his final 9 games. We've already talked about it a few times recently. Let's just give a quick projection for Lindholm for next season. He ended this season with 78 points, but such a down note to end on where he totally cooled off. If you were drafting him next year, would it be as a 78-point guy? I'm assuming no.
I don't know. Why not?
Oh, okay. So there you go. Why not? So we'll talk about it more. It's tough to say just because he ended slowly, but you're right. Like, good. If you still have faith in Gaudreau and Monahan, you still think Lindholm,
which I do,
and like we haven't seen Lindholm drop from the top line. Let's see what happens in the playoffs. Of course, yeah, maybe Lindholm will be a guy that maybe will fall a little bit in drafts, and you could get him as maybe not as much of a steal as you got him this year, but maybe you could get him a couple rounds later next year if people are worried about how he ended the year. I hate to do it. Got to mention Elias Pettersson ended the season pretty cold. Only 1 goal, which was yesterday versus St. Louis, and 1 assist in his final 7 games. He's still, even with that cold finish, he ends the season with an amazing 66 points in 71 games as a rookie. He's going to win the Calder, but he clearly lost some steam at the end. And I actually saw a recent Roto-World article saying he plans to work on his conditioning for next season. That's something we've talked about, Brian. Like, rookies maybe aren't prepared for how many games happen in an NHL season. So I know the answer to this, but do you have any concerns with Pettersson's slow finish to the year? Or do you see him as a guy who's just going to get better, be a lock for a point per game next season as a 21-year-old?
No, I'm bought in on Pettersson, which isn't what you thought I was saying. Was it on the Patreon cast, Elon, or was it last week?
Well, you said something on the Patreon cast when we were talking about keeper league strategies, and you said, right, like, I wouldn't take Pettersson yet. I'd rather take a sure thing guy. And I was like, I'd actually see Pettersson as like a sure thing guy.
Right.
But it
was
depends.
Like a keep 2 situation, though, just to be clear. In most keeper situations, I would absolutely keep Elias Pettersson. I think his best is yet to come, and I think it's fair to expect him to at least crack 70, and point per game is within reach. If this is what he could do in his first year in the season, with going cold at the end, needing some conditioning help, probably going to come back bigger. Who was the player, Elon? Do you remember now who was like carrying around an extra 6 pounds in training camp and like trying to adjust to like how to play heavy?
No, I don't know. I don't think I've heard that. Is that
there was recent? A guy? Yeah. It was Brock Besser. That's why I'm making this connection.
Oh.
And remember, he started slow.
I don't remember that actually at all.
And the concern was that he put on weight in the offseason, like he didn't know how to use it. And so like he had an awful preseason and like he didn't look good in camp. And if I'm just bringing up his game logs now to see like how he started the season, he ended really well. He had 56 points in 69 games. Yeah, he was off and running pretty quickly. Like you could call it slow for someone like Besser who started who maybe you expected huge things out of, and then he had only 7 points in his first 12 games, and I think that had people wondering in this narrative building, but yeah, then he got on his horse. So Pettersson, if he puts on weight and doesn't know what to do with it, just give him 12 games and he'll be fine.
Okay, there's the advice. Yeah, maybe he could stand to put on a pound or 2. He's a small guy. Brian, remember this guy Ryan Suter that was like a really great fantasy player as recently as a couple months ago? He ended the season with 47 points, but in his last 8 games, only 1 assist. He totally disappeared, kind of like Zach Werenski, I guess. Couldn't even get more than a shot off or block more than 1 shot in any of his final 6 games. So not only did he stop getting points, but he just became totally useless to you in any format for the fantasy playoffs. He's a guy that I wonder if people decided to finally drop. What a bummer, eh? Is his slowdown a big reason, by the way, for the Wild having such a rough end to the season and missing the playoffs? Maybe they were leaning on Ryan Suter, and if he wasn't able to take them there, they weren't going to get there. Next year, Dumba is going to be healthy. I think he's going to for sure take over as the top, at least fantasy defenseman to own in Minnesota, the main offensive guy. Will this be the Ryan Suter's final 45-plus point season?
It's possible. Like, especially with Dumba coming back full time. Although Ryan Suter, when we talked about him at the start of the season and how well he was playing, we were actually, or I was surprised to be like, I think he can keep this up. And to be fair, he did for a large part of the season. When he did finally disappear, his whole team disappeared. Elon, the Minnesota Wild were shut out 4 times in their last 6 games. That's brutal. And the 4 games before that, they combined for 6 goals. Like, you have to go back to like March 7th, game 68, to find their like a reasonably healthy run of goal scoring. After that, it was all garbage. So I'm not putting that at the feet of Ryan Suter, that the Wild only scored 22 goals over the last 14 contests. That's on the feet and skates of everybody, including front office, who made some very questionable choices towards the end of the season that undoubtedly shook things up, like shook up player roles and knowledge and systems and whatever that we were reading about towards the end of the season. So no, I'm not going to hang this on Ryan Suter, but I will say he is older, and it wouldn't be a shocker to see him not hit 45 points again, but he was sustainably like on a 50-point pace for a good chunk of this season. So I'd hope he has at least one more in him, but it'll be a challenge to do it at age 35.
Right. So you'll be able to draft him late, probably. I think even for a guy who got 47 points, I think a lot of people are going to be concerned about him being 35 and ending the season cold. So he's a guy I guess I would draft kind of late, but it would have to be pretty late, especially with this lack of peripherals at the end. And Brian, I definitely didn't mean to blame Ryan Suter for them not making the playoffs. I just meant to say, like, it wasn't just like going hand in hand. Like, they needed him to be at like his best to get them there, because otherwise they were going to completely fall apart. Like you said, of course, it also didn't help that Mikko Koivu got injured and missed the end of the season. You mentioned the front office trading away Nino Niederreiter maybe didn't work out too well for them. Kevin Fiala, I completely forgot actually for a second that he was there. Like, what, if you like, did he do anything? I don't think so. So yeah, we'll see what happens next year. I'm very proud of us in our joint league. We dropped Jason Zucker when the time was right, and in the couple I dropped Parisi and Eric Stahl when the time was right. And, you know, these tough drops, but you got to make them if the team's not doing anything and you're going on a playoff run. One more defenseman, Brian, to end our stretch of couple LVPs. Shane Gostisbehere. Let's just talk about him. We've done it all season long. So how about one more time before we talk about him another 3 times over the summer? Or maybe we should just stop. Maybe it's time to just forget about this guy. He had only 1 goal in his final 6 games. So for anyone who held on, hoping he would bounce back, he did for a little bit, but he didn't happen at the end. He didn't help you when you needed him most. Only ends the season with 37 points after he hit 65 points in the same number of games last season. So almost half the number of points. Just a terrible drop for Gostisbehere. Do you think he'll get another shot at being the top power play next season? Maybe Sanheim or Provorov gets a shot? Or like, even if Gostisbehere does get to stay on the top power play, could we, like, even still, like, this year he was there and he only got 37 points. So what do we think he can do next season? Like, I kind of feel like for sure you're going to be able to get him a lot later in drafts next year. I have a feeling he's the type of guy, Brian, that you're going to end up drafting in a lot of these because you loved Gostisbehere so much when we did the Almanac over the summer. I remember you were like looking at all the Philly numbers and you really like broke it down and said, I think this team overperformed. I think they're going to get a lot fewer goals next year. But you were like, except for Gostisbehere, I think he'll be fine. He'll still get his same number of points, but Giroux and Couturier, they're for sure going to fall. In the end, like, Giroux and Couturier actually were just fine, but Gostisbehere definitely took that big hit.
Well, to be fair, I thought Couturier would hold more steady. I thought Giroux was going to be the one who could not repeat the incredible, heartworthy 102-point season he had 2 years ago. And I mean, like, can I say I was right that he had only 85 points? But it's cold comfort to all my Shane Gostisbehere takes that did not come true, and all the patience I encourage people to have for him. Look, I don't have any real answers as to what went wrong for Shane Gostisbehere. Not yet. Anyway, it's something that I hope to look into in the offseason. I'm also hoping that, like, Philadelphia is allegedly one of these teams interested in Joel Quenneville, and the fact that they are at least signals that they're looking for a new coach. And I think a new coach could be something that benefits Shane Gostisbehere. He also had rotten variance on the power play. At 5-on-5, he was not so maligned, but like somewhat. If I want to look at those numbers and say he deserved better, I could justify that. So look, I know I'm still probably going to be a little too high on Gostisbehere going into next season, but I hope I'll control myself at the draft table. I still think that he has 60-point upside. It's just a matter of will he, like we'll find out, right? I feel like every year we think we know who Gostisbehere is, and then he throws a wrench into things. It's like, oh, he's not going to be that good. Oh, and then he is, and he's still going to be this good, and then he's not. So that pattern continues for him being a mystery. I still have faith, though. I'm betting on his upside still.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to not. I think the main reason is I feel like generally these defensemen who play less than 20 minutes a game, I find it hard to expect them to get you so many points. Like Gostisbehere is the type of defenseman who Philly like doesn't play on their top unit. Like, you know, he gets on the top power play, but he doesn't play the big minutes like, you know, your Brent Burns and your Seth Jones. And I don't know, I could probably throw out a whole bunch of names there. So John Karlsson, like, I don't know. So I just feel like he really needs to contribute on the power play in a big way to be super fantasy relevant. And I think he has some competition for next year with how this season went. So I'll let you draft him. I'm not saying I'll leave him as a free agent. I'll be happy to get him in the last round or the second last round if he's available, but I'm not using a high pick on him. I'm not saying that you said that you will. You're going to have next year Shane Gostisbehere and Patrick Laine in the late as your late picks in a lot of leagues. And who knows, maybe that'll lead you back to cupful tier 1 glory. We'll have to wait.
Sure hope so, assuming that I'm participating in tier 1.
Okay, well, you'll get back to tier 1 after a win in tier 2. So,
well, but I just for the record, I did win the consolation finals, which means I was the only non-playoff team to hold my spot in tier 1. I had a great consolation playoffs, but that's a little consolation.
No, that's great. No, it really is impressive. Like you had, to be fair, I love to make fun because Brian very rarely loses these things. It was a shock to me. I just assumed he was going to win or at least get into the playoffs of his league, but he didn't. And he had some bad luck for sure. Like you had a lot of fantasy points and your opponents happened to also get a lot of fantasy points. We discussed actually on our Patreon cast on Tuesday, some ideas you've come up with. I'm sure it's related ideas of how you could maybe come up with a fantasy format where you play defense and like get the option of sitting players on the other people's teams. So that would be really fun. If someone from Yahoo or ESPN or Fantrax wants to give us a call, we could share our ideas. We got some ideas of how to come up with some fun fantasy formats. But one classic fantasy format that's been around for ages is the box pool, right? You get your boxes with like 5, 6 players in each box, and you pick one player from each box, and then in the end, you add up everyone's picks. So multiple players in the league can have the same players. There could be some duplication, but it's very unlikely that 2 people will have the exact same, like 20 picks. So then you go and calculate who gets the win. And we've been doing this with our patrons for the playoffs every single season. It's always a lot of fun, and we're going to be doing it again this year. So if you're a patron of Keeping Karlsson for $1 or more, or like any amount, basically, you'll have access to join our our Keeping Karlsson patron playoff pool, and there will be a prize for first place. We haven't decided what it is yet. Usually I mail some random hockey item from my apartment, so I'll look for that. Sometimes we've sent it to second place and done something better for first place, but there's a prize for you. Oh, I also want to throw it out there. The people who won their couple divisions, you're getting a prize, so that's going to be coming to. Basically, Brian and I had to figure out, finish this season, and then now it's prize time, where we're going to figure things out. To make things even more crazy, we're going to throw a wrench into this box pool. What we're going to do is... so all the people who won the cupful, we want to do a special playoff pool with you guys, but there's 16 of you. Well, actually 15 of you and 1 of me. And so there's 16 of us. And so that's a lot of people to do a live draft on a show. So what we're going to do is everyone who won, play in the box pool, just like all the other patrons. And then we're going to rank us all 16 of us for who did the best in round 1 of the box pool. And then the top 8 will move forward and we'll do an entirely new draft for the second round. And we'll compete in that. And then we'll do an entirely new draft for the final 2 rounds, maybe with only 4 remaining teams. So I'll give you guys all the details. This is actually Ben Burnett's idea from Average Time on Ice, sort of like a survivor fantasy pool where players get eliminated as the season goes on. So I think this will be a lot of fun in the playoffs. So yeah, definitely if you won your cupful division, make sure to play in our box pool. And speaking of the box pool, Brian, I thought it would be fun for you and I to fill out our boxes live on the show. And as we do it, we can sort of give our thoughts on the playoffs. So What do you think? A new crazy idea on keeping Karlsson.
Let's do it. Let's aim. There's a lot of boxes here. So, I mean, we're not going to, you've stuck with us this long. If you're listening, we're going to try and keep it snappy. Elon, can I just ask one general playoff pool philosophy question before we get started?
Please.
So what's your feeling on trying to pick players from series that you think are going to go longer? Like, say, you know, there's a player who you think is going to make it 2 rounds, but is on a team that's only going to play, like, you know, might sweep their way through those 2 rounds, versus a player who you feel is going to get into like a 7-game dogfight in the first round, or like, I guess you'd still prefer the 8-game player in that scenario. But still, sometimes people try and like predict games played counts as part of their choices. Do you take that into effect? Or are you just looking for the guy on the team that's most likely to win?
Yeah, I definitely, in a pool like this, like what we're doing with the patrons, like for this special couple winners pool where we're going to redraft every single round, then maybe that would come into mind if there was a team that I was so sure would sweep. Though I'm not sure if I have a team at the top of my head that I think is the most guaranteed to sweep. Maybe the Boston Bruins. Sorry, but like,
okay, what if you have like a top end, like a 100-point player who you think is going to sweep his way through the first round, and an 80-point player who you're predicting is going to like have to play 6 or 7 games.
But it's just the first round. I'm going to take the player that I think is going to go far. Yeah. I also always get this wrong. I'm terrible at this. Last year, I came in last place in the draft we did with a couple winners. I took players from the LA Kings who got swept by Vegas in the first round. So don't listen to anything I say as we predict the playoffs. I always get it wrong. But with that, Brian, what's your answer, by the way? Do you care about how many games played? Do you think the first, like, who do you think, who does anyone think they are that they're going to project how many games played a playoff series is going to go? Like, it's hard enough just to project the winner.
Yeah, I think sometimes when you're not sure between 2 players, you try and take it to that granular level. Like you know, it might even be more of a question of, do you want like a 60-point player on a team that's going to go 2 rounds versus a 90-point player on a heavy underdog that you think might be able to still push it to 5-6. Like, it's hard. I try not to overthink it, though. I find the more I think about a playoff pool, the worse I do. You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, I think the more interesting question is along the lines of, do you take only like players from 2 teams and just go deep on a couple teams? Do you spread it around to 4 teams? Do you take like high point players from teams that you don't expect to go far just because you think they'll get a lot of points in the games they do play, like a Nathan McKinnon type, who maybe we aren't projecting Colorado to get out of the first round, but I could see him getting, you know, like 7 points in 6 games or however many games that series goes. So that's an interesting question. Do you want to speak to that quickly, or how about we just speak to that as we fill out our boxes here so we could get this ball rolling? And we'd love for people in the chat room, let us know what you think about who we should be picking in each of these boxes. We're doing a very straightforward, only forwards and defensemen, 1 point for a goal, 1 point for an assist, nothing fancy. Okay, so first box, Eastern Conference forwards, round 1. So you could choose 1 player between Aho, Crosby, Kucherov, Marchand, Marner, and Ovechkin. So one interesting thing about this pool that I'm noticing that we've set up on office pools is they're not having 2 players from the same team in the same box. So I've seen like Kucherov and Stamkos being taken 1-2 in a lot of playoff pools. Theoretically, Brian, we could take Kucherov, Stamkos, Braden Point in the first 3 boxes if we think Tampa's going to go far. So maybe we could almost like talk it through in terms of the first 3 boxes, because you could also take Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak, or you can take Gensel, Crosby, and Kessel. So are you going to go 3 players all from the same team for these first 3 boxes, or are you going to split it up?
And this is another matter of philosophy, right? Do you try and load up on one team, or do you try and spread yourself out to allow yourself to compete in a lot of different scenarios? Like, regardless of like who advances past the first round, you hedge your bets. I find that most playoff pool winners win by loading up. So I am going to go Kucherov and Stamkos in Point. I'm loading up on all 3 Lightning.
Yeah, I agree with the strategy. How about this for a strategy, though? I think a lot of people are going to take those 3 teams. So if I go the same way, then that means even if I get those 3 boxes right, I still have a low chance to win the pool, because I'm going to have to get so many other boxes then better than you as we go through. Versus if I want to take the contrarian view and pick another team, and if Tampa doesn't make it that far, all of a sudden now I'm competing against so many fewer people who are still in contention. So, you know, by the way, we have till Wednesday to change our mind, but I think I'm just for fun, I'm going to go Boston players. I'm going to go Marchand, Bergeron, Pasternak, and I'm going to have them upsetting Tampa in round 2. So it probably won't happen, but
interesting. If I was not going Tampa, I would be going Pittsburgh. I'd be going Crosby, Kessel, and Gensel.
I just feel like that Washington-Pittsburgh matchup in round 2, if it happens, it's
not going to.
Because you think Carolina is going to beat Washington?
I think Carolina is going to beat Washington.
I feel like Carolina-Washington is 50-50. Well, no, not 50-50, but I definitely agree that Carolina has a good chance. I really like the Hurricanes. Like, Mrazek has been good. They have Hamilton, who's hot right now. They've got these 2 good lines that are hot right now, but I'd still bet on the Caps winning that series. But I do think Carolina is one of those teams that could upset. I think my favorite upset, is that your like upset pick of the first round, or do you have another upset that you're projecting?
My other upset, I guess the other biggest one that I'd be calling is St. Louis over Winnipeg.
Well, they both ended the season with the same number of points, so I don't think that's like they were like 1 point difference.
I still think St. Louis is considered the underdog, although I did see odds today, and I saw, like, it's very early, but I saw St. Louis was like minus 100 or whatever, and the Jets were even. Does that mean that according to the odds,
it's basically even?
The Blues are favored? Oh no, it's even.
Like, I mean, they usually have like a little like minus 110 and even, just so that the house wins money no matter what, if both of them are bet evenly. But yeah, that doesn't count, Brian, as an upset pick by taking this basically pick'em series. I would say my other upset that I could see happening is I could see Colorado beating Calgary. And I guess a couple of reasons for that are, one, the Calgary goaltending is shaky versus Grubauer, who's super hot right now. And 2, I mean, like, at the end of the day, like, Calgary, has like 2 good lines. Really, like, maybe like they both have amazing top lines, right? Colorado's supposed to be fully healthy. They're gonna have Rantanen hopefully back, and then Landeskog and McKinnon are back. Well, McKinnon wasn't gone in the first place. Calgary has Gaudreau, Monahan, and Elias Lindholm. And then the second line, so yeah, Calgary has Backlund and Tkachuk and some third piece, and Colorado maybe doesn't have as much firepower, but I don't think they're that different in terms of depth. Like, I think both of them have pretty similar bottom 6. I guess. I don't know. Like, probably we could dig into it. And I mean, you look at the defense, like Tyson Barrie and Giordano. Like, I don't know. Like, I just feel like, again, Calgary's the favorite for a reason. Like, Calgary had an amazing season, but just because of the goaltending and then also some slight comparisons in depth, I could see Colorado winning that series.
Goaltending is a big question mark. I would say defense is where Calgary really has the edge. I think in depth also, like you're saying, it's Backlund and Tkachuk and then another guy. Like, I think Michael Frolik is more than another guy. So okay. I don't think Colorado really has. Anyway, we don't have to go too deep into this, but I also don't think Colorado has the defensive depth. If I were to pick, would this count as an upset, Elon? Toronto over Boston?
I think so. I think a lot of people are picking Boston to win that series.
So then Carolina and Toronto are my 2 upset picks in the first round. If St. Louis doesn't count.
Okay, so you've got me losing this pool because I've gone 3 Boston guys in my top 3 boxes.
Yeah.
I also just feel like Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak just get so many points. Like, even if they only play 2 rounds, that could still get me like pretty far if I can now pick good players in the next box. So let's look at the next few. We've got 1 box. It's kind of hard to do this on a podcast because we got so many names. Okay, so box 4 has, or box 1, 2, and 3 had a bunch of other players that you could go see if you're a patron, right? And if you're not a patron, you could probably imagine who the top 3 players are in a bunch
or just
of
be one, $1 a month.
Yeah, actually, just throw us a buck. We'd love to have you there. Basically free, and you not only will get access to this pool, but also in the Facebook group. We're gonna have a lot of fun over the summer. I don't want to make this a commercial though, but keeping Karlsson the patron. Okay, box 4. So you got Barzal, Duchesne, Gourde, Krejci, Malkin, and TJ Oshie. So it's kind of like you could either take like a star player on a underdog team, like a Duchesne or a Barzal. You could go with like a Yanni Gourde, whose team is projected to go the farthest, but he's Yanni Gourde. Or you can go, Malkin actually stands out pretty well. But why am I giving you my thoughts? Why don't you tell me your thoughts?
I'm going to go Malkin. I think Pittsburgh has the second best chance of coming out of the East after Tampa. I can never count them out. So I have them getting to the conference finals, which is enough games for Malkin to outpoint Gourde, even if Gourde goes all the way to the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. Josh Bailey for sure. No, so I'm looking at the next box now. Bailey, Dubois, Tyler Johnson, Kadri, Verana, and Justin Williams.
This is a tougher one. I'm between Tyler Johnson and Justin Williams, right? 4 rounds. I like you make your bracket first when you're doing these things, and you just have to buy into it. So I'm going four rounds of Tyler Johnson versus 2, maybe 3 of Justin Williams. I could see Carolina maybe sneaking past Pittsburgh. I'm gonna go with Justin Williams.
Actually, yeah, me too. Because also Justin Williams always gets so many points in the playoffs.
Mr. Playoffs.
Like, and Verona has it. Like, I could see Washington going far, and Verona still not getting that many points. Pierre-Luc Dubois could be good, but I don't. It'll be tough for Columbus to get past Tampa Bay. I'm for that series, though. Like, I'm excited to watch it. I'll bet you there'll be some exciting games. Okay, next box: Atkinson, Brett Connolly, Kapanen, Miller, JT Miller, Brock Nelson, and Nino Niederreiter.
For me, it's again between the Carolina star and the Tampa Bay depth player, and JT Miller versus Nino Niederreiter. Why am I leaning towards JT Miller here, though? Because he was hot a couple times towards the end of the season?
Maybe.
Like, does it make any sense for me to have picked Williams over Johnson, but Miller over Niederreiter?
Well, maybe you're trying to spread your depth out a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm going to stick... you know what? I'm going to go... I don't know. Who are you going to go?
It's so hard because now I've gone 3 Bostons, and now I have a Pittsburgh and a Carolina. So I feel like I can't do a 4th team. So I guess I'm not going Brett Connolly. Maybe but I will go a 4th team. I'm just gonna go JT Miller. I don't know what I'm doing right now.
Okay, I'm going Niederreiter, and we both reserve the right to change our picks.
Yeah, I guess I just feel like even if Tampa Bay loses to Boston in round 2, JT Miller could still get more points than these other guys because all these other guys could also go out in the second round. Like there isn't a Boston or a Pittsburgh guy in this list. Okay, next we've got Jake DeBrusk. Right. So have we discussed all the series now? We've kind of mentioned Boston and Toronto. Islanders and Pittsburgh. You're saying Pittsburgh, Carolina, Washington. I guess, yeah. So I guess we've discussed them all in the East. So DeBrusk, Ryan Dzingel, Andreas Janssen, Alex Killorn, Anders Lee, and Tom Wilson.
Jake DeBrusk.
Oh, but you have Tampa Bay. Oh, but there are no Tampa Bay players. Why not Alex Killorn?
Yeah, so I think I'd rather DeBrusk getting to the semis or getting to the quarters just the way he's been going. I'll take 2 rounds of DeBrusk over 4 of Killorn.
Did I make a mistake by not taking David Krejci over Evgeny Malkin in that other box?
I don't know. It depends on if you think Pittsburgh or like I think I might have made a mistake because I have Malkin and then 2 Hurricanes.
Well,
so I might like I don't want teams that are like, I don't want to really stack guys against each other who are playing in the quarters.
Yeah, well, right now I've got Marchand, Bergeron, Pasternak, and DeBrusk, and then I feel like Krejci would fit in well there. But Malkin's Malkin.
It's almost like you have to decide now whether you want to go all in on Boston or you want to just hedge a little.
Yeah, it was kind of unfair of them to not give me some Pittsburgh options in the next 2 to even it out. I could go on defense. I'll keep it how it is for now. So defense now we've got in the East. The first box, Karlsson, Hedman, Seth Jones, Torrey Krug, Chris Letang, Morgan Riley. So I assume you're going Victor Hedman here?
Yeah, he has a little plus sign, a little red cross next to his name, but he's likely, right, to play?
Yeah, the coach said that he could play in the first game. Probably be back. So we don't know 100%. He hasn't confirmed if it's concussion or not, but he'll probably be back, you'd think.
Yeah, so I'm going Hedman.
I guess for me, then it has to be between Torrey Krug and Chris Letang. So maybe I'll balance out this Pittsburgh thing a little bit. Can Boston play Pittsburgh? Yeah, because Boston-Pittsburgh would go all the way to the conference finals. Yeah. So I'll go Torrey Krug.
Are you just trying to be contrarian with Tampa? Like, what's your reasoning for thinking that Boston's going to beat them?
I feel like if Tampa beats Boston in the second round, and again, sorry to the Leafs fans, I'm not saying it's impossible for the Leafs, but I'm just saying I'm picking Boston to beat the Leafs. I'm saying if Tampa beats Boston, I feel like I'm very unlikely to win anyways because of all these other boxes. Because it's like everyone I feel like is going to take the Tampa guys. So I want to take Boston to beat Tampa. And then if I'm right, maybe I only have a 40% chance of being right, but then I'll have a much better chance of winning the pool overall. So I'm sort of maybe out overthinking myself here, but I don't want to compete against the 80% of people who take all Tampa guys. I'd rather compete against the others.
Right. You'd rather just be out with the others. You're taking a longer shot to compete against a smaller pool.
Yeah, I feel like I have a better chance to win by taking Boston. I think Boston could beat Tampa. Like, I don't think... Like, Boston's a very strong team.
It's possible.
like Boston doesn't have as great a record, I think, as maybe they should, just because they had some of their star players miss a lot of time this year. Like Bergeron was out for a bit, Pasternak, like Torrey Krug, but right now they're fully healthy, which is rare, right, for Boston in the playoffs. So I'd love to see what they can do. Okay, next, Hamilton, McDonough, Jake Muzzin, Orlov, Pulak, and Werenski. I assume you're going Ryan McDonough here?
Well, it's McDonough or Dougie Hamilton.
Right. You're like kind of down on McDonough. I remember like I was asking you.
I'm going with McDonough.
Okay. I remember, Brian, when I asked you, should I pick up McDonough was somehow dropped in my cupful tier 2 Ottawa division. And I remember being like, I think I'm going to add McDonough. He's like on Tampa. He's so good. And he had been a little cold lately. And you were like, I don't know. But I grabbed him. He was amazing in the end. He didn't make any of our list.
That was before Hedman was out?
Yeah, this was like a month ago.
Yeah.
It was like he had been on a bit of a cold streak, and I grabbed him, and then he was amazing all the rest of the way. But he was the type of guy that you could rely, even if he wasn't getting points, he was so reliable for your hits and blocks to get you something.
Yeah, I mean, he had a really long stretch where he was barely like relevant, and by really long stretch, I mean like 43 games, half the season, where he scored like a point every 3 games and wasn't shooting a whole lot. But then he turned it on right like first week of March, so good for him.
Yeah, this box is hard for me. Hamilton, McDonough, Muzzin, Orlov, Pulak, and Werenski, because there's no Boston options. There's no Pittsburgh options. So I guess I'll go Carolina. I'll go Dougie Hamilton. Since I took Justin Williams earlier. Next box. Falk, Jake Gardner, Nick Leddy, McAvoy, Matt Niskanen, Mikhail Sergachev. As a fun game, the listeners could try to guess why some players say their full first name, last name, and others I only do the last name. Try to decipher that one.
And then tell Elon if you have figured it out, because he'd like to know.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Justin Falk here over Mikhail Sergachev, I guess, is the other consideration. Like, I wouldn't be averse to taking a Toronto player. It's just, like, I don't really want Gardner or Muzzin, who are available in the last 2 boxes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I would have taken Morgan Riley, but I preferred Hedman.
How did McAvoy do to end the season? Is he like been a somewhat reliable point getter, or is it only Torrey Krug? Let me bring this up here. So he ends the season with only 28 points in 54 games. It's actually not so bad
it's not so bad for Charlie, especially for Charlie McAvoy. Like he was like, and that's sort of the pace he was on for the last month or 2 of the year.
Yeah, give me McAvoy.
Well,
give me little Mac.
You got him.
Punch out reference.
He's yours.
Okay, we're going to the Western Conference here, Brian. So
finally.
We haven't really discussed yet who we're taking here. So we've got the first.
Can you just tell me, am I crazy? I'm going to read the first box and tell me if one of these names just jumps out as not belonging here. Gaudreau, Hurdle, McKinnon, O'Reilly, Sagan, and Wheeler.
Yeah, I don't know why Hurdle's there. But who led okay, so this is an off-the-cuff podcasting here. You guys can let us know if you like this or hate this. But whatever, this is the last episode of the season also. So we're allowed to have a little fun. I
would have guessed Pavelski would have been in the first box. But, like, I know he had some rough times.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the totals for San Jose on the season right now. So leading the team in points was Brent Burns, of course, 83 points. Tomas Hurdle next, 74 points in 77 games. So you can't argue with the final stats, right? Joe Pavelski way down at 64 points in 75 games. So almost same number of games, and Hurdle at 74 points and Pavelski at 64. So maybe you're not giving Tomas Hurdle enough credit, Brian.
Maybe I'm not, but I'm also like, even though I actually have San Jose going to the Cup Finals in my bracket, I am reluctant. I actually have the winner. I haven't actually decided, but the winner of the San Jose Vegas series is my Cup finalist.
Okay, well, we'll have to.
But I'm not sure who's going to win that series.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Yeah. Hey, I thought the winner of the Vegas LA series would make it to the final.
Oh, you were right.
And that's not true. I don't know. I just made that up. Okay. So who are we discounting? So you're saying Hurdle is potential. There is no Vegas option here, but you could also just take a team that you think you're more confident in getting to the second round. You mentioned St. Louis, so you've got Ryan O'Reilly available. You have Blake Wheeler, Tyler Seguin, but Dallas is going to be, I guess, in tough against Nashville. And you've got Nathan McKinnon, who
This is a tough one because, like, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say Nathan McKinnon. I made an argument for potentially Colorado going far, and I think McKinnon's probably, well, and Gaudreau. There is Gaudreau also, Brian. If you disagree with my, it's not even like a strong opinion, just wanted to throw it out there. No one knows in the playoffs. Like, Gaudreau is probably your safest bet here as a team that was the top team in the Western Conference. and
Right.
he's a really great player.
So I feel like Gaudreau is probably one of the guys I feel most comfortable I'll get 2 rounds out of, but I also think that we're not going to get any more than that out of him. Like I have Calgary and Winnipeg both getting some ugly surprises at some point, and like Calgary because of their goaltending, Winnipeg for that matter, in part because of their goaltending too. Hellebuyck has not had a good year. So the question is, do I take what I think is going to be 2 assured rounds of Gaudreau, or do I try and grab Hurdle, who I could get 4 rounds out of? I think I'm going to go Gaudreau.
I'm going to agree. PJ in the chat saying Colorado can upset if goaltending falls flat for the Flames and stays strong for the Avs. I really think the goaltending could be the difference. I'm scared of Gaudreau. Who did you say? You're taking Gaudreau?
I'm taking Gaudreau.
Give me Ryan O'Reilly. I love Ryan O'Reilly. He's so good. And St. Louis, I think, can beat Winnipeg. And then in round 2, that means they would play the winner of the Dallas-Nashville series. I feel like that's a winnable series for St. Louis.
If there was a Predator or Golden Knight in this box, I might have taken them, but there wasn't.
All right, so let's go to the next box. And will be both of those available to you.
Ryan. Oh, okay. You can read them. You're doing a great job reading them.
Thank you. Why don't you read this one? Let's see how well you could do reading a box.
Well, I did the last one, but I'll do this one too. Okay. You have Logan Couture, Ryan Johansson, Sean Monahan, Mikko Rantanen, Mark Scheifele, and Mark Stone.
Yeah. So that's a tough one, especially because I took St. Louis. So for me, like now that I took St. Louis, I feel like I shouldn't take Mark Scheifele. At the same time, I kind of like the Sharks also, so I guess that would make me take the Sharks. To be fair, Brian, the Sharks. How can we speak to how badly they ended the season? They were like less than, I think it was like 4 wins in their last 10 games or something like that. Like it was a really slow end.
Karlsson's back. It's okay.
Yeah, it's just because of Karlsson. Their goaltending's shaky, just like Calgary, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's the biggest reason why I'm concerned that they won't make it to the finals with a solid. You give them any goalie outside of Calgary's, and I feel like they are a cup finalist. Like of all the playoff teams, if you could borrow any of the Western Conference playoff teams goalies, pluck them onto San Jose. San Jose is your cup finalist for sure. But Martin Jones scares me.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to play a little game here with myself. I don't know if you guys remember this. I made a bet on the Sharks to win the cup at the start of the season. I put down $50 to win $750. So I'm hoping for the big money, but maybe as a consolation prize, I can try to win this keeping Karlsson patron playoff pool. So I'll take Mark Stone. The thing is, Mark Stone hasn't even been like, I wish that my option here was like Marchessault. Like I'd prefer him over Mark Stone.
Well, you can get him in another box.
Yeah, but then it's like, why am I not taking you know what?
Mark, yeah.
Okay, who are you taking? This is the toughest decision I've made all day.
Really?
Yeah.
Like what did you eat for dinner? Was that hard?
No. Okay. I didn't eat dinner yet, actually.
Oh man.
I'm gonna after.
Yeah, this is venturing into patron cast territory. I'm going to go Logan Couture.
Okay. Give me Mark Stone. Let's see. I don't know about that one. I might change that one. Okay. West next. Mikhail Granlund, please. No. Gabriel Landeskog, Elias Lindholm, Timo Meier, Alex Radulov, Vladimir Tarasenko. This one's easy for me.
This is really, okay, you go first.
Tarasenko. I took Ryan O'Reilly. Give me Tarasenko.
I want the Nashville guy. It's like, Nashville and San Jose, just like as far as forwards go, they have a bunch of good forwards, but no one who's like so like irresistible.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna go Timo Meier. Is he healthy?
He has a square beside him, but I could look that up. How about you look that up while I talk about the next box? So the next box is Jamie Benn, Kyle Connor, Jonathan Marchessault, Joe Pavelski, Braden Shen, Matthew Tkachuk. So for me, at this point, I've already taken 2 St. Louis guys, and I've taken a Vegas guy. So you'd think I should take someone between Braden Shen and Jonathan Marchessault. Let's go with, I guess, Braden Shen. I'm going to go all in on the Blues top line. I'm loving them right now. So, Brian, up to you. Timo Meier, apparently possible broken wrist, so you might want to stay away from him.
Oh, so what I've seen is that he would play through it if it was a playoff game.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
But like, I don't want a guy playing with a broken wrist, though.
Well, whatever. He'll just like pass it to Brent Burns, and he'll take a shot from the point, and something good will happen.
Okay, I changed my pick to Terrace. You know what? Elias Lindholm. Boom.
Okay. And then what about the next box? I took Braden Shen.
In the next box, I am going to take. It's hard because I don't know between San Jose and Vegas. So I'm like, should I just stack Calgary for whatever reason?
Well, just pick one. You could just pick one and go with it.
I can't decide. Like, with Vegas, it's Marc-Andre Fleury. Like, I feel like he could. Like, they have two solid lines. Their defense is good. And then you've got Fleury and net. I don't know if there's a goalie I would be more afraid to face going into the playoffs. This is I'm going I'll go Joe Pavelski.
Okay, Joe Pavelski. So you're going Sharks now.
Yeah.
Well, you took Couture. You took Couture in that other box, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I took Mark Stone in that box. I'm not so happy about it, so I might still change that. Okay, West next. Mikael Backlund, Philip Forsberg, Kevin Hayes, William Karlsson, Gustav Nyquist, David Perron.
Forsberg. Like, this is so easy for me. Like, I've been dying to take a Nashville guy because I think they're going to get to the conference finals, if not the Stanley Cup finals. So, yeah, give me him amongst this other riffraff.
You hate David Perron so much. Like, how many?
No, I don't hate him. He had a great season. He was on my team. He helped me.
But he's riffraff.
Yeah, I mean, comparatively.
Right, 46 points in 57 games for Perron. Okay, so no, I'm saying like that's like not superstar level. He was pretty strong to end the year. I've already taken a bunch of St. Louis guys. I did take Mark Stone, so I could take William Karlsson here, or I could go with David Perron. I'm just gonna keep loading up the Blues. Give me David Perron. Let's do it. Let's go to. All right. So next, two more forwards to go. Arvidsson. You're just gonna take Arvidsson, I think. Arvidsson, Laine, Riley Smith, Carl Soderberg, Joe Thornton, Matt Zuccarello.
Yeah, Victor Arvidsson for me.
All right, I'll go Riley Smith. I wasn't planning on going Vegas when we started this, but I think my bet on the Sharks, it's like both of these things. It's like, it's not necessarily the team I want to think's going to win, but I'm trying to give myself the best chance to be happy. And so that's why I went with Boston. That was more strategic because I feel like everyone's going to go Tampa Bay guys. And then now I'm taking Vegas because at least if I lose my Sharks bet, maybe I could do something here. Okay, so last box of forwards, Nikolai Ehlers, Michael Frolik, Evander Kane, Alexander Kerfoot, Craig Smith, and Paul Stastny. We haven't really talked about the Nashville-Dallas series. You think it's like Nashville in a walk, right?
Yeah, I mean, Ben Bishop has been outstanding this season. Vezina candidate, if only he'd played another 5 to 8 more games. Yeah. But Dallas, to me, just does not have the depth to sustain themselves in a playoff series against one of the best teams in the West.
The thing is, I feel like they have a wild card in Zuccarello. Like, we haven't seen them play with Zuccarello. Maybe he is the depth that they need.
No, they need like 2 or 3 of Zuccarello to, I think, have enough depth.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I feel like Dallas has more firepower overall, right? Radulov, Sagan, Zuccarello, I think beats out the top 3 in Nashville, Johansson, Forsberg, Arvidsson. Maybe it's close. I don't know. Okay. Last box. Ehlers, Frolik. Did you already pick this one? Ehlers,
I went to Evander Kane.
You went Evander Kane over... that's kind of surprising. I thought maybe you'd go with your favorite guy, Craig Smith.
No.
All right, so give me Paul Stastny here. So I end up with all Blues, and then I still get Stone, Riley Smith, and Paul Stastny. So I get
3 Western defensemen left.
All right, so first box, Tyson Barrie, Brent Burns, Mark Giordano, Roman Josi, John Klingberg, Jacob Trouba. I know you're not taking Trouba. You're going Roman Josi, right?
No, I'm going Brent Burns. I'm buying in on San Jose. It's official.
Well, now there's no Vegas and there's no St. Louis option for me. So I'm going to go with my upset pick here and give me Tyson Barrie to beat the Calgary Flames. That's my upset pick of the.
That's your upset special.
Yeah, that's my one upset of the playoffs that I'm most confident in is Colorado beating Calgary.
Okay.
Okay, you're like smiling. Okay.
It was my resting face. I'm a very pleasant person.
You are. Okay. Brody, Bufflin, Ekholm, Heiskanen, Erik Karlsson. I know where you're going. You're going Karlsson, Alex Pietrangelo.
Okay.
Yeah, you got to go Karlsson there but I've been taking all these Vegas guys, so give me Alex Pietrangelo on St. Louis. What a guy. Okay, and then the next
me? Because I laughed at you?
Yeah.
Vince. No, I thought it was fun. Like, yeah, you've taken all these Vegas guys. Personally, or I guess if you're into Vegas, yeah. No, I think that makes sense given the rest of your bracket.
I guess I could just switch all my Vegas guys to San Jose guys, but I am worried about the San Jose goaltending, and I already have this bet. Okay, so no one cares.
Like, San Jose has one of the shakiest goalies, and Vegas has one of the strongest. So you figure, like, goaltending does win playoff matchups. It seems like I should be going with Vegas.
You never know. San Jose does have Erik Karlsson.
The boxes just didn't shake out that way for me.
West, last defenseman. Vince Dunn, Ryan Ellis, Noah Hannafin, Josh Morrissey, Shea Theodore, and Marc-Edouard Vlasic. Ryan Ellis, by the way, was also like a big disappointment at the end of the season. He did nothing for his owners in the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, and he had a really bad schedule too. So for anyone who's like, one game of Ellis is better than 2 games of Streamer Joe over here, you were probably wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Streamer Joe. I'm going to take Shea Theodore. So you can go with, I'm assuming, Vlasic or Ryan Ellis.
Yeah, I'm going to go Ryan Ellis.
Okay. I'm saving my team. Right now I'm called Elon's team. I'll come up with a better name later. Brian, there we go. That's the episode. You know what we haven't done? We haven't done our tributes of people who won and lost their leagues. But you know what? We've got all summer for that. So
Elon.
I got to go, Brian. It's too late.
Come on.
Know what? What's the difference? Okay,
we still listed all the names. People are expecting it. I can just do it alone. We don't have to alternate.
No. It's fine because I want to get more listeners for the summer series. So if you submitted your name, we've got it documented.
Oh my God.
And we'll say it on the next episode. It's fine.
I think that's rude. People listen this whole episode.
They suffered through
They did. They skipped through the playoff pool and then skipped back. Come on.
Send your hate tweets to @Dubro, DUBRO.
Start a 4-minute timer. Let's knock this out.
Fine, go. I don't even have it. I don't even have the list.
Okay.
Where is it? Oh, you're killing me, Brian. It is 10:38 p.m. and I still have to edit the episode. You just get to write a little write-up and go to sleep. Then I have a 9:30 meeting tomorrow. But
that must be nice. I've got to be at work for an hour and a half before that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go. All right. So these are because I can't put I want to put a lot of pomp and circumstance into this. I want to make it a big deal, not rush through it.
Send your hate tweets to @DUBROE.
Okay. Thanks everyone for listening to us all season long. We appreciate it. If you didn't listen to us all season long, then I should almost give you special thanks for only listening at the end because that's not usually how our numbers go. But yeah, I've had a lot of fun. It's because of you, the listeners, that we keep on making this show. And I feel like, Brian, hopefully I can speak for you. We plan to keep doing this for another season and hopefully a few seasons after that. Plus, we have a whole fun summer series coming up. So please don't unsubscribe because we're going to have a lot of fun hockey talk. And we're going to be trying to give you great advice for your drafts for next season and for keeper league decisions. Plus, we're going to talk about the playoffs all throughout the summer. Plus, we're going to talk about all the free agent signings, the draft. So there's a lot of fun stuff coming at Keeping Karlsson. So thanks again for everyone for listening. And go ahead.
Just bear in mind, we'll see you again in 2 weeks, right? We're going to do all this stuff, but on a bi-weekly schedule. So no episode next week, but in 2 weeks from today.
Yes, of course. We don't have that much to talk about, but we'll get you bi-weekly all throughout the summer. And if you want to join in on all the fun on our patron Facebook group and to join this playoff pool, which there will be a great prize, it's just undetermined at this time, you can get all the information by signing up at keepingkarlsson.com/patron. Ignore everything you read there. Just put $1 and we'll give you everything you need. Okay. So with that, Brian, let's cue the outro music. And why don't you go ahead and read us the credits?
All right. And I just want to echo you, Elon. Thanks everybody for supporting us all season long. We couldn't have done this without you. Okay, stick with us. All right, this episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was supported presented by Dobber Hockey and powered by our patrons.
You could take it over if you would like.
Okay.
This episode of Keeping Karlsson.
Okay. This episode of Keeping Karlsson was presented by Dobber Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our most recent one, Braden. Welcome aboard, Braden. This episode was researched with help from Dobber Hockey, Frozen Pool, Dobber Prospects, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Corsica, Charting Hockey, Cap Friendly, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, Roto World, and Yahoo.
Great job, as always, Brian. This has been a pleasure getting to talk to you every week. And now I'll just get to talk to you every 2 weeks. So that'll be kind of sad, but love you, man.
We can still talk.
Okay, great. So I'll message you. I guess I could ask like how your family's doing and stuff like that now that the hockey season's over and we don't have to just talk about who we're going to be adding and dropping from our leagues.
I'm sure there will be other fantasy relevant questions in the meantime.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, we have to make keeper decisions in my league. Okay, the music is playing. Goodbye, everyone, and we'll talk to you all in a couple of weeks.
Until then, enjoy the playoff hockey. First round of the playoffs is literally my favorite time of the hockey season. So please enjoy. And until next time, keep on keeping Karlsson.
Am I a nerd that my favorite time is like free agent signing day, July 1st? No, I'm just kidding. I really love watching the playoffs too. Okay, bye, everybody.
Bye.
Cool. That was a long one.
Very long.
With the delay. Goodness me. Whew. Okay. See you, pal. And then maybe we could talk tomorrow about arranging all the prizes and also arranging like posting whatever we need to post in the cupful zone and like some sort of odds and ends.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've got stuff to work out.
Yeah. And the almanac. Gotta talk about that.
There's
oh my God. Never ends. But at least we have a couple weeks. I don't have to plan a show next week. So that's good. Thanks to everyone who stuck around in the chat room, by the way. PJ, Prince, like Kevin, that's awesome that you guys stuck around until 10:40. You can still probably catch the main event of WrestleMania, I hope. Okay. Bye.
Bye.